Good morning. Start your day informed and ahead. Today is Wednesday, the 26th of August. I'm Angela Lagunsad Castro.
And I'm Cheska Litoncala. We're bringing you the perfect mix of the headlines you need and the conversations that shape your day.
From the news desk to the digital space, we have got you covered. I'm Pauline Verzosa, and welcome to Morning Matters.
Vice President Sara Duterte's early request for confidential funds came under scrutiny at her impeachment trial. OVP Assistant Chief of Staff Lemuel Ortoño confirmed Duterte initially sought 250 million pesos even before the office had submitted a fiscal and financial plan. The OVP eventually received 125 million pesos, which was spent in just 11 days. Ortoño said the money went to obligations already incurred, prompting Presiding Officer Chis Escudero to ask if the OVP had already committed to expenses before the funds were released. The COA also flagged a 150,000 peso discrepancy, which Ortoño said he personally advanced for rewards and supplies. Ortoño also said he did not see official receipts for the confidential fund expenses. The prosecution, meanwhile, argued Duterte did not need confidential funds for personal security, saying threats could be covered by AFP and PNP intelligence operations. Escudero also cautioned against using inflammatory terms such as scam and mastermind during the trial.
You will agree with me. This whole confidential funds matter, ang arkitekto at mastermind nito ay si Vice President Sara
Your Honor,
Duterte.
please. Your Honor, please. Objection.
Sustained. Counsel,
Mastermind. Move to strike, Your Honor.
we'll have to strike it off, counsel. Kindly replace it with words that are more acceptable.
Based on my understanding, sir, and based on no, sir, yes, the Vice President knows about the confidential activities and how it is being implemented.
All right, so yesterday was the day 18 of the impeachment trial. Parang ang tagal-tagal na, no? Pero day 18 pa lang pala, week 7, and parang sinasabi nga nila, abot kaya to talaga. I mean,
February.
matatapos ba to ng end of the year? Pero, which we doubt it. Pero, well, let's zero in, no? Doon sa nangyari yesterday. I'm sure marami rin kayong mga i-share sa atin, sa viewers natin. But, of course, the second hostile witness was presented yesterday. The name of ASEC Lemuel Ortoño. Apparently, he worked pala for Duterte, Sara Duterte, for almost 2 decades na. Matagal na siyang nag-work sa kanya. So, he explained why 2022 confi funds was spent in just 11 days. And maganda rin yung punto ni Presiding Officer Chis Escudero when he asked na the budget in the GAA or the GAA is good for 2 years anyway. So why was there a need to implement it within the year? So i-breakdown lang natin yung timeline kasi nga nakita nila dito na she asked for the confidential funds without even giving yung PFP, which is a very important document when you ask for confidential funds. So August 2022, no, of 2020, August 22, 2022. No, so she wrote a letter sa DBM asking for confidential funds because apparently nga yung kanyang predecessor, which is former VP Lenny Robredo, sila yung nag-ayos ng budget for 2022 pero walang naka-allot doon for confidential funds. We all know, hindi naman talaga parang regular for Vice President to have confidential funds. Tapos September 15, the DBM said, kailangan namin ng plano, di ba, yung physical financial plan. So that's when VP Sara wrote na on September 16. So by September 19, 2022, nag-submit na rin ng additional documents ang OVP. Tapos that same day also, after which a DBM released half of the requested amount, which is 125 million. Tapos, of course, sinasabi nga ng prosecution yung dahil wala nga mga detalye, this is a scam or sham at nauna pa yung pera kaysa doon sa actual plano. Oo, 'di ba? Parang siguro ikaw magulang humingi sa iyo yung anak mo ng pera. Pero yung pera basta kailangan ko, parang ganon, confidential. Tsaka siya nag-present. So anyway, at the end of the day, of course, the question remains, which of course ito din yung mga naging question natin yesterday kay Atty. Calleja, na why is the prosecution reluctant to invite La Chica to shed light on what's happening. Kasi alam naman natin yung sinagot ni Attorney Calleja yesterday. But at the end of the day, anong mangyayari? 'Di ba? So, pwedeng tawagin siya ng defense sa side nila, 'di ba? Mag-present ng kanyang mga ginawa dito sa confidential funds, hindi din natin alam. Depende talaga yun sa mangyayari sa impeachment court. But at the end of the day, sabi nila, ang pwedeng gawin daw is pag natapos ang presentasyon ng both the prosecution and the defense at may gusto pang liwanagin ang Senate Impeachment Court, pwede daw nila ipatawag itong sila Chika or anybody that they want to ask questions. No? They call it amicus. Amicus curiae. The term is friend of the court. So, ganun. So, pwede nilang tanongin, pwede silang maglinaw nung gusto nilang ninawin at the end of it.
Pero si Colonel La Chica, kung siya daw tatanungin,
Yes.
won't refuse.
Yeah,
He's willing to appear.
Subject to applicable laws and ano
Ayan, may condition siya. But so, that's a good sign na siya, willing naman siya humarap. Di siya magtatago, di siya magbibigay ng excuse na kesyo may sakit o ano. He said, if lawfully called, I'm prepared to tell the truth. I have never refused to appear or testify. But as of now, baka kasi yung tingin ng prosecution na ilatag naman na nila yung kanilang case, right? That there were indeed irregularities in the spending of the confidential funds. And di ba sabi nga ni Attorney Calleja yesterday, kung i-present pa nila sila Chika, they don't know what he's gonna say.
Yeah,
They have nothing to compare his statements to. Baka kung ano pa sabihin niyang makasama sa prosecution.
But also a few other pertinent points that we heard Ortonio confirm yesterday that that he was indeed with OVP SDO Gina Acosta when she withdrew the confidential funds. He also confirmed that the 125 million in confidential funds were dispersed in those 11 days na lagi natin pinag-uusapan, that he was the one who received the COA's AOM, that he was the one who drafted the OVP's response to COA's AOM, and he also just consulted Acosta and La Chica on ano yung information to include. So it's so hard to reconcile like why we haven't seen or heard Colonel La Chica being called to the stand because his name is everywhere. And both Acosta and Ortonio have said na sa kanya galing eh. Sa kanya galing yung information. So, like, again, we know there are possible risks to continuing to calling hostile witnesses. But when someone's name is all over the place, syempre, you can't stop the public from wondering,
Yes,
ano bang...
From a normal perspective sabi mo, bakit, di ba? Tawagin yun na, para ano ba yung gusto niyang sabihin?
Kasi baka ma-explain din naman ni Colonel La Chica kung saan ba talaga din ginamit, di ba? Baka nagkaano lang sa pag-liquidate, sa mga AR, maybe he can shed more light, although I know the nature of the operation is confidential, pero para magkaalaman na talaga tayo.
At saka bakit niya binabawi yung resibo? Di ba remember, sabi ni Gina Acosta, na parang after mag-liquidate, kapag naipasa na sa binabawi daw.
So ano yung point?
So parang, ang chain of reaction chain of command is mag-instruct si VP Sara, tapos si SDO Gina Acosta will disperse the money, and then the Chica will implement. So ang tanong natin doon, saan niya in-implement? Bakit? Ganyan.
Ay, marami din nag-point out nung salary grade ni
yes.
SC20.
29.
29.
So 180 to 190,000 pesos.
150K yung inabono niya.
Oo. So may
Hindi pa nga daw siya nabayaran.
Oo nga.
Pero marami ring teachers nagsabi, ganun ko pala kataas ang
buti
pero
pa
ganun
sila.
yung trabaho nyo. 'Di ba? Parang kulang sa diligence, ganyan, hindi tama yung pag-liquidate. So, marami pa rin tayong tanong. Today is day 19. And it's the cross-examination of the defense today. All right, but meanwhile, Ombudsman Boyeng Remulla called Davao City the, quote, epicenter of flood control projects during a House committee hearing on the agency's proposed 2027 budget. Remulla said a significant portion of infrastructure funding went to the Duterte bailiwick. His office is looking into some 200 flood control cases, 4 of which have already been elevated to court. But Remulla clarified, however, that the projects under review cannot yet all be considered tainted by corruption.
Meron po bang ginagawa ang ombudsman sa pag-imbestiga sa mga flood control corruption issues sa panahon pa ng nakaraang administrasyon?
Opo, at hindi lang humadali talaga sapagkat sabihin natin, ang epicenter po ng flood control bago dumating ang Marcos administration ay Davao City.
Okay.
Ang ecosystem of corruption po mabigat. Mahirap pong pasukin. Mahirap pong kumuha ng impormasyon Marami hong taong hindi nagsasalita, pero hindi ho kami tumitigil.
Okay, so it was actually also Congressman Tino who flagged all these anomalous flood control
Yes.
projects in Davao, right? Sabi niya, out of 121 flood control projects in Davao City's first district pa lang from 2019 to 2022, which as we all know is during the Duterte administration, 80 contracts doon worth 4.4 billion pesos were flagged for irregularities, including may double funding daw for projects, may overlap, yung iba nag-iiba yung location ng project, hindi mo talaga makita doon na yun pala yung location ng proyekto. And then some, of course, were also substandard, ghost projects. So it really raises some red flags here. And apparently the contractor there was Genesis 88 Construction, which is owned by Glenn Escandor, who was also a close friend of then-President Rodrigo Duterte. Parang sports advisor din siya. So, sabi nga ni Ombudsman Remulla, this doesn't automatically mean there's corruption, pero kailangan pa rin yan imbestigahan kasi 4.4 billion pesos and yet there are so much anomalous projects nga. And sabi nga nila, di ba, paulit-ulit, paborito to ng ilang mga kongresista, contractor, because flood control is not really visible to the eye. It's usually underground, di ba? Kaya usually, kung mag-ano sila, may kababalaghan silang gagawin, favorite nila itong mga flood control.
But also in response, Davao City 1st District Representative Paulo Duterte, he said na check the actual records of the DPWH and if ever, he said walang dapat piliing taon, pangalan, parties, or administration. Kung may anomalya, imbestigahan. Kung may ebidensya, ilabas. Pero wag daw gawing shortcut ang political narrative para makabuo ng conclusion. But with regard to the Office of the Ombudsman, this discussion happened during the budget hearing. Diba? So he also said na the Office of the Ombudsman is planning to form a committee to monitor how public funds are being spent.
Madali na naman yung kung pinagtatalunan natin
Ano naman tayo?
investigation
Ano plano?
Diba? Kumbaga parang sinasabi ko dahil of course ito sinasabi nila epicenter itong Davao and then of course the Dutertes will somehow of course rebut yung claim na yan, no? That's expected naman. Pero madali naman pag-usapan yan 'di ba? Through investigation. And aside from that, yung if the flood control projects have delivered results, no? If you can see nung July, 6 communities across Davao City including Barangay Los Amigos were deeply affected by the rains. So yung families doon were stranded and 80% of the 3,000 families there were deeply affected. So yung mga residents doon are asking, what happened to the flood control projects? As sinasabi nyo nga, billions, approximately 51 billion for infrastructure project from 2020 to 2022. 'Di ba? So, asa na 'yon? So, yung inaano natin, 'di ba? Pwede kayong magtalo diyan, hindi totoo to, etc. Mag-imbestiga kayo. Pero yung mga taong bayan, sila yung sila yung nakaka-experience nito kung may resulta ba yung ginawang flood control projects.
All right, moving on. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy in Manila and the Armed Forces of the Philippines are setting the record straight amid protests from Beijing. The Chinese embassy earlier questioned the presence of American and Filipino military personnel at the Sanjia Steel Corporation facility in Tagoloan, Misamis Oriental. In a statement, the U.S. embassy maintained they were just evaluating the site's potential for the Balikatan military exercises. It added that the ocular was, quote, part of routine planning efforts. When notified of facility access requirements, the team moved on to other site visits as planned. At no point was entry insisted upon. But Chinese embassy spokesperson Ji Lingpeng hit back on social media, accusing the Philippine government of selective law enforcement. Ji questioned if Defense Secretary Gebot Teodoro knew about or authorized the plant's selection for military drills before the raid. The Chinese embassy spokesperson also accused Teodoro of using squid tactics to divert public attention and make baseless claims against Beijing. The issue reached Congress during the House Committee on Appropriations budget briefing for the Department of National Defense. Lawmakers quizzed the defense chief not just on territorial security, but also on suspected Beijing-backed operations embedded in Philippine politics. Okay, so this goes back, if you remember the Chinese workers who were already arrested back in May at the Sanjia Steel plant. And then this was because of possible safety hazards. And then some of the workers were allegedly undocumented. The thing is, Sanjia Steel is located on government property, so it's inside the Philippine Veterans Development Corporation compound, and it's supervised by the Department of National Defense. We already heard from the spokesperson of Sanjia Steel before. She said na it's not about public safety, it's harassment packaged as law enforcement. And then just last week, Defense Secretary Gibo issued quite a strongly worded statement na the Chinese embassy is now a PR firm for Tony Yang. Tony Yang used to be the owner of Century. There's so much to unpack, but also, I mean, this also goes back to Defense Secretary Gibo and his family being barred from entering China, Hong Kong, Macau.
Sunod-sunod
And
na eh,
sunod-sunod.
no? Nanganganak.
So this is not gonna end anytime soon. That's
Well, you could see nga, sabi nga na at first glance, it sounds like a simple parang side visit lang siya. But if you will look at it on a broader perspective, yung context ng rising US-China tension, then this becomes a bigger issue, di ba? So, pero syempre, ang tanong nila dito, bakit may kasamang US soldiers? Eh, syempre nang sabi ng US soldiers, hindi naman to official military visit, so we don't know about it, etc.
Yeah.
Pero the question still remains, bakit may US soldiers? Even if it's, you say, it's a
Balikatan.
Philippine government-owned facility or yung land na yun, whatever, bakit may kasama? Eh, kasi sinasabi nga nila because of the Balikatan 2027. Pero you'll see, and yung mga, ano ba yun, 2024 pa yun, yung nagkaroon pa ng mga Senate hearing, if you remember, nung senator pa si Senator Tolentino, na sinasabi niya na meron daw isang firm na, ang tawag dito, hinire ng China,
Yes,
na para mag-troll dito sa mga, again, anti-China personalities, etc. So, talagang ang daming issue.
Yep. All right, don't go away. Morning Matters will be back after a short break.
One News. No tropical cyclone or low pressure area is being monitored, but the southwest monsoon or habagat continues to affect Luzon. Pagasa says Zambales may experience occasional rains. Scattered rains and thunderstorms are also expected over Metro Manila, Ilocos Region, Cordillera, Cagayan Valley, the rest of Central Luzon, Cavite, Batangas, Rizal, Occidental Mindoro, Palawan, and Antique. The rest of Luzon and Western Visayas may see isolated rain showers or thunderstorms. And Pagasa warns of possible flash floods or landslides during moderate to heavy rains. The Senate impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte continues to zero in on the OVP's use of confidential funds. And for the latest, we are joined by mobile journalist Merimon Reyes. Merimon, okay, so tell us ano ba yung naging highlights kahapon at ano ang na-establish ng prosecution sa naging testimony ni Lemuel Ortonio?
Pauline, itong si Atty. May Divina Gracia ang nanguna ng direct exam dito kay Assistant Chief of Staff ng OVP and Assistant Secretary Lemuel Ortonio. And sa naging testimony kahapon ni Ortonio, lumalabas na while he has supervisory position sa OVP pagdating sa pagre-request, supposedly sa paggamit and even sa pagliliquidate ng confidential funds, ang nag-dictate ng CF na kinakailangan ng OVP for the last quarter of 2022, pati sa unang tatlong quarter na 2023 ay si Vice President Sara Duterte mismo. And while noong pumasok siya noong July 2022, predecessor kasi ni VP Sara, si former VP Leni Robredo. So during that time, wala raw confidential funds ang OVP. Kaya nag-request sila through a letter na pinadala nila sa Department of Budget and Management. Pero doon sa request nila for confidential fund, walang naka-attach na computation, projection, supporting documents that will show na ito yung halaga na kinakailangan nila. Later on na lang, mga within 25 days noong magsa-September, August sila nag-request ng budget. Noong September nila, hinabol itong physical and financial plan. And to note, yung last testimony ni Gina Acosta, former SDO ng OVP, sinasabi may inputs daw doon sa PFP itong si Colonel Raymond Lachica ng VP-SPG. Pero nabuksan din kahapon na eto may letter mula sa OVP na sinasabi September nagsimula pa lang bilang security officer si Colonel Lachica. And wala rin daw mga resibong natanggap itong si Ortonio pagdating sa pag-i-implement ng confidential funds, mga programa at aktibidad nito. Acknowledgement receipts lang kasi ang nangyayari daw, binibigay daw sa informants or agents itong pera at sila na raw mismo yung bibili nung food aid, nung medical kit o kaya naman yung ibang supplies na pinaggastusan supposedly ng confidential funds. Pauline.
Merimon, kahapon nabanggit ulit yung salita na scam. Ginamit ulit yan ng prosecution. I think this is already the third or fourth time na ginamit nila yan in this impeachment trial. Ano ba yung naging konteksto niyan? At ano na rin yung naging paliwanag ni Atty. Divina Gracia matapos ang hearing kahapon?
Pauline, nung last time pa nung si Atty. Amando Virgiliguta naman from the prosecution, may mga nabanggit pang modus operandi, nabanggit din salitang scam. Kahapon din si Atty. Divina Gracia, nabanggit niya rin yun. At dahil daw sa iba-ibang pagpapaliwanag, kumbaga may iba't ibang versions, pagdating dito sa pagre-request hanggang sa pag-i-implement ng confidential funds, pero wala pa rin malinaw na pagpapaliwanag sa kung saan at paano ito ginamit. Hindi raw ba parang scam ito na masterminded by the VP? Dito, pina-strike off the records ni Atty. Christine Ferrer from the defense itong naging remark dahil daw it's for soundbite, pero iba raw yung, nagkakaroon daw ng conclusion of fact and law doon sa naging statement na yun. So it was stricken off the record, and dito nagpaalala si Presiding Officer Chis Escudero sa dapat na obserbahan na decorum ng mga abogado or ng counsels from both the parties. Pero after nung trial kahapon, nakausap din natin si Atty. May at sinabi niya, they want to call a spade a spade. So naniniwala pa rin sila na itong system nakikita nila dito, yung sa case in chief nila, it is a scam masterminded by the VP. Meanwhile, ngayong umaga rin, bago magsimula itong cross-exam kay Ortonio ng defense, unang-una sa agenda ay yung pagbababa ng hatol ng impeachment court tungkol sa subjudice rule. And possibly magkaroon pa ng pagpapaalala naman sa kailangang obserbahan na decorum netong mga abogado. Pauline.
Merimon, pagdating naman kay Colonel Raymond Lachica, ano na ang posisyon dyan ng prosecution? Ipepresenta ba nila si Colonel Lachica dahil paulit-ulit na nababanggit pa rin yung kanyang pangalan kahit sa testimonya ni Mr. Ortonio?
Pauline, all roads are so far leading to Colonel La Chica. Yun nga yung lumalabas sa mga lumipas na araw. Pero ang huli kasing nasabi ng prosecution kahapon, baka, hindi pa siya set in stone, pero baka hindi muna nila kailanganing ipatawag or i-present itong si Colonel La Chica. Ang nasabi dyan ni lead prosecutor Jinky Luisto, they are testing yung repetitiveness, yung redundancy, at kung kinakailangan pa bang ipatawag ang isang testigo kung paulit-ulit naman na raw yung testimonies nitong current or nung mga lumipas na witnesses. So for now, while hindi pa nila sinasabing wala na talaga, pero if in case dumating na yung araw na hindi nila mapatawag si Colonel La Chica, o kaya naman it's a matter of defense, so yung defense naman na magpe-present na ng direct exam dito kay Colonel La Chica, one thing's for sure, magkoconduct ng cross-exam ang prosecution. Well, kahapon naman, naglabas din ng statement itong si Colonel La Chica na kung sakaling ipapatawag daw siya, ay handa naman daw siyang humarap at tumestigo. Pauline.
All right, well, thank you very much for those updates. That was mobile journalist Mary Mon Reyes. Now, in other news, the palace said it is open to proposals to ban social media platforms and online gaming apps over concerns about violence among young people. The statement follows Meta's allegedly prolonged response to the Cybercrime Investigation and Coordinating Center's request to take down a video showing violence at a school. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said the proposal needs to be thoroughly studied, noting that social media platforms are also being used to spread fake news.
Kung hindi magkakaroon ng accountability ang anumang social media platform at para nababaliwala ang ating mga hiling para proteksyonan ang ating mga kababayan laban sa karahasan, laban sa fake news, kung mabagal ang pagtugon, magandang pag-isipan at pag-aralan kung dapat silang manatili na parte ng ating sistema.
Meanwhile, Castro said the prosecution has, in a way, presented enough evidence to support the conviction of Vice President Sara Duterte for the alleged misuse of confidential funds.
In a way, yes. Pagdating sa pagturo kay Vice Presidente, kay Colonel La Chica, na sila ang nagkontrol ng pondo para sa confidential funds. Depende po iyan sa magiging desisyon ng mga lagi naman nila sinasabi na ito ay politika at mukhang hindi sila pupunta sa ebidensya. Pero ang mga kababayan natin, mas marami ang gusto na ebidensya ang gamitin kaysa sa issue ng politika.
The Philippines witnessed its first ever telesurgery with a surgeon in Shanghai, China, performing robotic surgery on a patient in Quezon City. Mobile journalist Denise Valdez-Sancho has this report.
What if your surgeon could operate on you without even being in the same country? In Quezon City, a robotic arm has helped make history as the Philippines witnessed its first ever telesurgery.
This will be the first time that there will be a telesurgery in the Philippines with the surgeon doing the robotic surgery from China and the patient being here in the Philippines.
Simply put, telesurgery means a doctor can perform an operation from a different location using a robotic system controlled remotely through the internet. In this case, the surgeon was in Shanghai, China, while the 53-year-old patient was here at the Urology Center of the Philippines.
We're going to perform the robotic-assisted radical prostatectomy for a patient who has an intermediate risk of prostate cancer.
The robot offers a closer look with a highly magnified three-dimensional view and more precise instruments. For patients, that could mean less blood loss, less carrying, and faster recovery. But what happens if the internet connection fails? That was also covered.
Actually, it will not affect the outcome of the surgery because you have an expert surgeon right here in the Philippines who's going to take over the surgery.
But perhaps the biggest promise of telesurgery isn't just what it can do today.
With the lack of surgeons across the country, the future here is that you can have these robots in different municipalities, in different islands, but you cannot provide all the doctors. So the doctor, the expert surgeon can be here in Manila doing the operation through the console, through the internet, with the patient either in Masbate, in Sulu.
From Shanghai to Quezon City, the country's first telesurgery lasted more than 5 hours, with the patient's cancerous prostate successfully removed, marking a major step forward for robotic surgery in the Philippines. Mobile journalist Denise Valdesancho. We are One News.
Now don't go away because Money Talks with Kathy Yang is up next to get you ahead of the markets. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Stay tuned to One News.
Kathy Yang, your intel on the Philippine markets and the economy. In the headlines, the country's growth may be the second slowest among ASEAN 5 until 2027, according to OCBC. As Moody's forecast, it will unlikely top 6% in the medium term. Vehicle sales reported to be at its highest this year in July as demand for EVs continue to go up. And Citi holds on to its rate hiking expectations when the Monetary Board meets tomorrow, August 27. We speak with Citi's Johanna Chua, the head of emerging market economics at Citigroup. Says the Philippines' medium-term growth outlook remains dismal, with a slow investment recovery and climate-related shocks weighing on the economic rebound. The Debt Watcher expects the country's GDP growth to hover below its pre-pandemic level of around 6%. Still, it said the economy will be supported by favorable demographics, resilient remittances, and service exports, and a gradual recovery and investment. Moody's slashed its 2026 Philippine GDP forecast to 3.6% from 5.5%. This after second quarter growth slowed to 2.3%, which brought the first half average to 2.6%. Meantime, Singapore-based Overseas Chinese Banking Corporation sees the Philippines lagging its ASEAN 5 peers through 2027. The bank cut its 2026 GDP forecast to 3.2% from 3.8%. If realized, this would make the Philippines the second slowest growing ASEAN 5 economy, ahead of only Thailand. The figure would also mark the country's weakest growth since the pandemic and its slowest expansion in 17 years, excluding the COVID-19 period. The government's Commission for GOCCs is targeting the completion of the liquidation of at least 5 state-run firms this year, as the government moves to shut down entities that no longer serve their purposes. GCG chairperson Marius Corpus says the 5 are among 21 GOCCs currently lined up for abolition. He said the list is still being reviewed by a technical working group, so the 5 firms have yet to be identified. The GOCCs come from sectors including agriculture, transportation, finance, energy, and real estate. Finance Secretary Frederico earlier said about 10% of more than 100 GOCCs should be shut down to free up public resources. Corpus said the liquidation process is quite tedious, but the government must protect public interests. There are currently 124 active state-run firms. The Supreme Court has ruled that a bank cannot force a depositor to return funds withdrawn in good faith if the loss resulted from the bank's own gross negligence. The case involved a 151,200 peso check deposited at BDO's Lucena City branch, which was issued by a land bank branch in Albay. A teller mistakenly processed it as a local check, making the funds available after 3 banking days instead of the required 7 days for a regional check. Believing the check had cleared, the depositor withdrew 76,000 pesos. BDO later received a stop payment order and demanded the money back. When Barcellana refused, the bank withheld her remaining balance and filed an estafa complaint against her. The trial court acquitted Barcellana for lack of fraud, and the Court of Appeals affirmed the ruling. BDO then asked the Supreme Court to order her return the money under Solucio de Ebito, but the High Court found the bank had committed multiple errors and failed to follow its own check-clearing safeguards. July saw the highest monthly auto sales for the year, with demand for electric vehicles showing no signs of stopping. The Chamber of Automotive Manufacturers of the Philippines, or CAMPI, and the Truck Manufacturers Association reported an increase in auto sales to 42,880 units in July from 38,295 a year earlier. The figure represents sales estimates from CAMPI, TMA, and other auto brands. But CAMPI and TMA estimates alone show a slight decrease in auto sales to 37,319. The surge continues for electrified vehicles, with CAMPI and TMA recording 7,086 units sold in July from just 2,707 a year earlier. Hybrid EVs led the pack with 2,964, followed by battery EVs and plug-in hybrid EVs. CAMPI President Jose Maria Atienza acknowledges that, quote, the shift of electrification continues to accelerate. The high demand for EVs come as President Marcos promises support for local EV production. The president yesterday visited Caloocan-based MD Juan Enterprises Inc., which specializes in automotive parts manufacturing. It is a beneficiary of the DOST Small Enterprise Technology Upgrading Program, where the agency provides financial assistance to MSMEs.
Yan ang ating mga hangarin para mabawasan ang dependence on petroleum mga products na nanggagaling sa ibang lugar, at sa ganung paraan ay magiging mas stable ang ating ekonomiya at ang hanap buhay ng lalong-lalo na yung mga kasama natin ang nagpapasada. The next step is to put in some of the new equipment that is still necessary for the production of the electric vehicle, together with our technical consultants. I believe that we will soon be seeing a Filipino electric vehicle tricycle at maybe down the road baka gawa na tayo ng jeepney.
Markets brace for a fourth straight rate hike by the Monetary Board tomorrow, Thursday, as growth hits a 5-year low and the dollar wobbles on the U.S. Treasury's own buyback move. Citi is holding its hike call against a growing chorus for a pause. Joining us now, Johanna Chua, the head of Emerging Markets Economics and Chief Asia Economist at Citigroup, based in Hong Kong. But Joe, welcome back to Manila and to the program.
Hi, Kathy. Nice to see you.
Yeah, and in better weather, Joe, you missed all the habagat. So walk me through why you're still in the hike camp for tomorrow's decision.
I think we have to recognize the fact that inflation is still very elevated in the Philippines. We're still above our target of 3%. So our forecast for the end of next year, we're still averaging about close to 4%. In the grand scheme of things, even if the BSP hikes to 5%, if you look at ex-ante real rates in Philippines, it's still not that high. And I think we are in an environment where, to contain inflationary expectation and the spreading to core, we still have the Iran crisis that is still unresolved. We still have crude oil inventories, especially diesel product inventories, that are very low. So we're still having upward pressure on energy prices. We still have Super El Nino coming, so there's still ongoing supply side shocks. Even though we can make an argument that there's nothing much the BSP can do on supply side shocks, there is still the risk that from an elevated level of inflation, the risk of second round effects, the need to anchor inflation expectations, and the fact that in the grand scheme of things, real rates in Philippines is not that high, especially when you factor in global interest rate environment, and that we have a now acute competition for funds.
Super or strong El Nino, because about 48 hours ago, BSP Deputy Governor Zino Abinoja at the Philippine Economic Briefing in Davao flagged the risk of Godzilla El Nino, and he did cite that the government was already preparing for it in the way of adjusting planting calendars, supporting irrigation, using drought-tolerant crops. Are these not enough? That monetary policy will have to move ahead of whatever will come forth because of the weather?
I mean, you can never really fully prepare for a weather anomaly like this. So unfortunately, it's good to prepare, but it's never really going to be sufficiently enough. Again, we don't know exactly how bad it's going to be, but all the meteorologists are saying, if you look at all the metrics, the sea surface temperature now, the Nino 3.4, the 3-month moving average determines where the oscillation Nino index is. If you look at just the 1-month average, we're already at Super El Nino. We need to average in the 3 months, and the probability is very high. And all the indicators, when you look at sea surface temperatures, it's going to be the highest on record, the most worst on record since basically 1950. If you look at an older metric of atmospheric measures of El Nino going back to, I don't know, the 1800s. This is also supposed to be the worst. So I think there is a view now that the risk is very high. And this is happening at a time where you have this underlying trend of global warming overlaid by a potentially very bad super El Nino. Not to mention, we still have an Iran crisis that is unresolved. We still have the Bosphorus Strait, Black Sea, Russia, Ukraine grain shipments that are completely disrupted because of the attacks in the ports. So we have so many other supply side choke points that are happening at the same time. We are very concerned. And obviously, grain prices, which is very water intensive, very sensitive to these shocks, is something we have to factor in. And in Philippines, we have the highest, Philippines really stands out globally in terms of the highest single commodity rice weight in the CPI basket that is almost 9%, and a very high cereal weight on the CPI basket.
Yeah, but
So
we
it is
also have
unfortunately
to
a
talk
risk.
about growth, Joe, because as we were coming into this strong El Nino at the start of the month, Q2 GDP just came out at 2.3%, and the governor himself said that the weak second quarter growth eases the pressure to hike. So in that regard, how do you think the Monetary Board will decide in, say, the next 24 hours? Is it because they'll decide in favor of growth or because of the coming El Nino?
Well, a lot of things that are dragging down growth is also unfortunately not in BSP's control. I mean, we obviously have an environment where there's a lot of concern about public investment being very slow because of a lot of the lagged effects of the flood control scandal projects. We've got a lot of underlying uncertainties that are also dampening private investment. The BSP is absolutely right that given that growth is relatively weak and growing below potential, there's less concern about the kind of second round demand driven inflationary effects from a purely supply side shock. So that is absolutely true. So we're not expecting BSP to hike dramatically. I mean, at the moment, we only have 2 hikes. But it's just that given where the
What do you
inflation
mean
is
2
coming
hikes?
from,
How would that
so we
look
have
like
an
then?
August hike, and we still, right now, our baseline forecast is we have an August hike, and then we have another hike in October. So we end at 5.25. Of course, that's assuming the Fed is not hiking, right? I mean, obviously, in fact, our assumption is the Fed is relatively benign. But like I
Despite
said, there
the
are
bond
other-
buybacks, I'm going to pull that in because there are 2
Sure.
new U.S. policy developments that's possibly complicating the BSP's policy path. You've got the expanded Treasury bond buybacks affecting U.S. yields and the dollar, and the tougher Iran sanctions possibly restricting oil supply, especially if Washington targets China. So taken together, Joe, do these increase or reduce the probability of another BSP rate hike or hikes?
I mean, at the moment, certainly the bond buybacks are signaling to us that the Treasury is very uncomfortable about the level of the back end of the yield curve, right? Now, the question is, to what extent is that kind of a discomfort about the overall interest rate environment? We still believe in some level of central bank independence of the Fed. So we will see what Kevin Warsh is going to deliver at the Jackson Hole speech on Friday. But again, the problem is Kevin Warsh doesn't want to give us any forward guidance. So it's not like we're going to get a lot of clarity. At the moment, based on our kind of metrics and analysis, when you look at core PCE, core CPI dynamics, and the latest non-farm payroll data, at least the data in the US, does not really signify an imminent rate tightening. And if anything, the market has been paring back its rate tightening expectation of the Fed, but the market is still pricing in almost a full hike by the end of the year. So we are going against that, but I think if the Fed does not hike or doesn't seem like there's a lot of urgency and the Treasury is signaling discomfort, then at least that helps reduce the risk that the BSP has to also hike on the back of the Fed. So that's a dovish signal, a dovish supporting argument.
But it also depends on what the Treasury Secretary Bissett will do. And it's really impacting the dollar and the resulting
Yes.
weakness of that. So doesn't the resulting
that's another-
weakness take the pressure off the peso and the BSP to hike at all?
So there definitely is a dollar debasement argument to the fact that the more you intervene in the back end of the yield curve, you try to suppress yield, it shows the risk premium will show up somewhere else and that shows up in a weaker dollar. So that certainly helps the peso. But I have to say, if you look at Philippines, we're still running a current account and a basic balance deficit. You're right that the pressure of the kind of disorderly spiral in Philippine peso has weakened a little bit. But it's not like we have a large appreciation happening in the peso either. We still have a lot of drags and confidence concerns about the value of the peso. And similarly, I think the other thing that we have to factor in is that, we're coming from an inflation level. It's all about what is real rate relative to expectation. Are we really very tight? How tight are we to get inflation anchored? And we don't know what the neutral real rate. We have to kind of feel it. And right now, if you believe, I think BSP used to say real neutral rate is between 100 to 200 basis points. If you still think inflation forecast, consensus inflation inflation expectation next year could be around 4. And like I said, that's already assuming oil can normalize and we don't get a crazy El Nino. If we get something even worse, there's always risks around that. It is prudent for policy to at least, be a little bit more vigilant. So we think real rates are not, even though you can make an argument they shouldn't over tighten, I think them tightening, hiking 1 or 2 times to us is still a consistent policy stance for them to achieve sustainable inflation target given all the other
All right,
things
well,
that
we're
are happening.
seeing the open on the peso right now. It's a touch stronger, 61.63 to the dollar, coming all the way from 61.738. I just want to pull in China because, Joe, if Washington ultimately avoids confronting major Chinese buyers of Iranian oil, would that materially lower the case for another BSP hike?
Well, right now we're waiting for a resolution of the US-Iran negotiation. And I think the problem right now is we're in a stalemate. We're stuck. So if the economic D-Day does not follow through with a lot of teeth, it's hard to figure out to what extent the other party will come to the table. So at the moment, I don't see a very, very clear path. Because if US cannot really impose punitive restrictions on China because China has a lot of leverage, then there's still a lot of leakage of how Iran can still manage. And then that means we're still stuck in a stalemate. And so there's still a lot of, it doesn't seem like the Strait of Hormuz is opening anytime soon at this juncture. And right now, I think Iran thinks they have maximum leverage ahead of the midterm elections because that's when US is under pressure. So I don't know. We will see. Besant was rather vague about how exactly is he going to enforce the secondary sanction. Is he really going to go after major, a significant financial institution? And since China already came out with very, very strong statements, it's like, and then China, we've already seen last year with the Liberation Day, China does have a bit of leverage. We will have to see exactly how far and how much teeth US D-Day is going to be.
And how that
and we're definitely not.
translates to the monetary policy statement, that is going to be the single clearest signal in the
Yes.
post-meeting. So what would you look for that would
Well,
indicate
obviously,
that,
I
yes,
mean-
there will be another hike in October?
Well, look, I think energy prices is a very salient source of inflationary pressure, just like food is a very salient source of inflationary pressure. And if Brent crude is still kind of elevated because we don't really see a clear end of the tunnel, light at the end of the tunnel, and we continue to deplete, inventories of crude products like diesel continues to go down, so there is still pressure on fuel prices. That will support the view why BSP still needs to be prudent or relatively cautious. And so I think that's part of the reason why we still think they will hike in this meeting.
All right, just as a final point and a potential growth driver, we talk a lot about packed silica. I know that Citi's July report in AI and the emerging markets growth singled out the Philippines, noting that its BPO export growth is slowing sharply while India is staying resilient. Do you think the Philippines is at risk of missing the entire AI boom? Or do you think that signing up for packed silica has already changed that?
Well, first of all, we already know that Philippines is not part of the AI supply chain capex build out. So that's not going to happen. So where the opportunity could be is AI diffusion and whether AI diffusion can generate more jobs or higher skilled jobs that can be pro-labor and boost income. And of course, there's still a lot of uncertainty because we're still in the early phase of adoption at the moment. And right now, at least on the reported BPO, IT services, business services, we seem to be slowing down very sharply in Philippines as opposed to India, as opposed to even Poland. Now, the question is that a measurement problem? Is it that somehow we're not capturing some of the outsourcing that is informal, more individual private that's happening, that we're not capturing the BOP data? It is possible. But I think there are a lot of concerns that, again, the initial disruption, there's a lot of worry that AI can commodify low-level tasks. So if you can even if you make a worker more productive by making him do his job faster, you don't need to hire that many people. And I think the worry is that if it is slowing down the hire rate and it is commodifying low-level tasks, that can be not supportive for growing labor income share. Now, the opportunity for Philippines is if you can actually upgrade the skill. If AI enables low-skilled labor in Philippines to perform higher skilled tasks and you allow new jobs and a skill convergence, that can be more pro-labor. But the jury is still out. And right now, we're not really seeing signs, at least anecdotally, it seems like a lot of uncertainty is still generating, it seems like a slowdown at this juncture.
Okay, so I'm holding out for 2 rate hikes, like you said, tomorrow and October. Thank you so much for your insights, Joanna Chua of Citi. And you're watching Money Talks. Coming up, Philippine markets tumbled Tuesday as uncertainties weigh on investors' sentiment. And we get a preview of day 19 of the impeachment trial against Vice President Sara Duterte. Our mobile journalist Merimon Reyes joins us live from the Senate. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Kathy Yang. The Senate impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte enters day 19 with the OVP's use of confidential funds still under scrutiny. For the latest, we're joined by our mobile journalist, Merimon Reyes. So, Merimon, could you give us a quick brief recap of yesterday's hearing and what can we expect today?
Patty, for day 19 of the impeachment trial, the defense panel will be conducting its cross-examination on OVP Assistant Chief of Staff and Assistant Secretary Lemuel Ortoño, who testified yesterday that yes, the OVP did request for confidential funds August of 2022. However, they only prepared their physical and financial plan later on around September. So that's around 25 days after the request. However, also, this plan did not pass through the office of Ortoño. And if we're going to recall, Gina Acosta, former SDO of the OVP, testified that she, alongside the VP SPG Chief Commander Colonel Raymond Dante La Chica, had inputs. They were the ones who prepared and put into paper what the confidential funds will be used for. So, however, it was also pointed out yesterday that according to a letter of the OVP, Colonel La Chica only entered into office September of 2022 when they actually requested for the budget or the confidential fund in August 2022. No official receipts, however, were given to Ortoño for liquidation purposes because what happened was the money supposedly for the purchasing of rewards, medical aid, food aid, and other supplies, money were directly given to the informants or the agents who in turn will be buying such supplies. So no official receipts were given, only acknowledgement receipts. And in total, Ortoño also testified that VP Sara Duterte herself dictated how much in confidential funds will be needed for the last quarter of 2022 and for the first 3 quarters of 2023, each 125 million pesos. And then in total, Ortoño also confirmed that he went with Acosta during the time that they will be encashing or withdrawing the confidential funds. And when he was asked why the CF for the last quarter of 2022 were spent in just 11 days, he justified that it was meant for the last quarter of 2022, October to December. But the question here is reimbursements are not legal when it comes to the use of confidential funds. So that's a loophole that the prosecution noticed. And according to Attorney May Divina Gracia of the prosecution panel, what they wanted to elicit from Ortoño, they did elicit yesterday. So what we are anticipating for today will be the cross-exam of the defense, followed by interjections or clarificatory questions from the senator judges if time will permit, as well as the ruling of the impeachment court regarding the sub judice rule and which between or among the panels actually violated such rules. Attorney Amando Virgil Libutan will be heard first, explaining his part regarding his post online related to the impeachment trial proceedings, and later on, the court will be giving its ruling. And that is the latest so far of what we are anticipating for the trial this day. Back to you, Kathy.
Okay, thank you for the update. Our mobile journalist, Merimon Reyes. Now let's take a quick check on the Philippine peso again. See how it's open this Wednesday. It is stronger, 61.63 to the dollar. The peso slipped by 0.8 centavos yesterday to settle at 61.738 against the greenback. The dollar regained its strength after the U.S. imposed economic sanctions against Iran. Mike Ricafort of RCBC expects the peso to range today between 61.65 and 61.80 to the dollar. Checking in on the markets overseas, U.S. futures fall in overnight trading. The Nasdaq sheds 0.33%, S&P 500 down 0.1%, and the Dow slips less than 0.1%. Asian markets are mixed in early Wednesday trading. South Korea's Kospi up 0.4%. Australia's ASX 200 advances 0.2%, and Japan's Nikkei 225 slides 0.33%. U.S. markets rose Tuesday ahead of NVIDIA's earnings release after the bell Wednesday and Fed Chair Kevin Warsh's first speech at the Jackson Hole Conference Friday. The Nasdaq rose 0.6%, and both the Dow and the S&P climbed 0.33% each. And Philippine markets tumbled yesterday as uncertainties over the Middle East war continued to weigh on investors' sentiment. The benchmark PSEI fell nearly 1% to settle at 6,190. Besides the Gulf War, the sell-off was triggered by investors maintaining a defensive stance ahead of tomorrow's Bangko Sentral meeting. Total turnover value improved to 5.27 billion pesos, but market breadth remained negative, with decliners edging out advancers 108 to 77. The broader all-shares index slipped 0.6%, with the sectoral gauges all losing ground. The 10-year government bond yields ticked up to 7.295%. And the latest developments on the corporate front, the Securities and Exchange Commission is moving to limit a group of accreditation to external auditors with no material deficiencies found by the regulator. The move is part of tighter oversight following issues involving the Maria Francesca Tan Group and some Villar-led companies. Meantime, New NAIA Infra Corporation plans to use its performance-based agreement with Philippine Airlines as a template for other carriers at Ninoy Aquino International Airport. The agreement sets service standards for check-in, baggage handling, boarding, and aircraft turnaround to improve airport efficiency. And PLDT Incorporated has rolled out environmental, social, and governance assessments for suppliers as it extends sustainability standards across its supply chain. The telco is also stepping up supplier engagement to human rights, biodiversity, and environmental compliance. And before we go, Hollywood is mourning the death of beloved country music icon, singer-songwriter Dolly Parton. She died at the age of 80. Parton's family confirmed her death in a video message. The singer's cause of death has not been disclosed, but her publicist said she died peacefully in Nashville. Parton rose to fame in the 1960s and built a career spanning music, film, and television. She became known for hits including Jolene, 9 to 5, and I Will Always Love You. Beyond her music, Parton was also known for her philanthropy, including her work to promote children's literacy and support communities in need. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Kathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Kapatid, we are One News, your side, all the time. Morning Matters returns at 9:30 a.m. Have a great day ahead.
Good morning mga kapatid. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Vice President Sara Duterte's confidential fund spending is again under the microscope at her impeachment trial. Here's the report.
Vice President Sara Duterte's early request for confidential funds came under scrutiny at her impeachment trial. The prosecution raised questions over why the funds were sought soon after she took office, even before the OVP had a clear plan on how the money would be used. OVP Assistant Chief of Staff Lemuel Ortonio, the second hostile witness in the trial, confirmed that Duterte initially sought 250 million pesos in confidential funds. But at the time, the OVP had not yet submitted a fiscal and financial plan to the Budget Department. Ortonio said the plan was submitted nearly a month later. In the end, the OVP received only half of the amount, 125 million pesos.
Kinukumpirma mo rin na for the OVP's request for in this letter, walang computation na binigay. Tama ba?
That's correct. No
There was
computation.
also no projection provided in the same letter. Tama ba?
Yes, that's correct.
And also, there was no physical and financial plan attached to the letter.
There were no attachments, ma'am.
The physical and financial plan that was prepared 20 days after you requested confidential funds from the DBM. Hindi plano ang nagtakda ng halaga. Ang halaga ang nauna sa kahinabol ng plano. The respondent's handprints are on every document that mattered.
Ortonio was then asked to explain to the Commission on Audit how the entire 125 million pesos was spent in just 11 days. The OVP said the money was used for obligations already incurred. That prompted Presiding Officer Chiz Escudero to ask whether the OVP had already committed to pay certain expenses even before the confidential funds were released. The COA flagged a discrepancy in the OVP's confidential fund expenses. Its accomplishment report listed total expenses of 125 million pesos, but the evidence payment was 150,000 pesos more. Ortonio previously said some receipts may have been mixed in, but he later confirmed that he personally advanced the extra 150,000 pesos.
Nung binigay mo ba ito, yung 150,000, may hiningi kang resibo, patunay na nagbigay ka ng 150,000.
At the time po, because the urgency and dahil humingi po ng tulong si Miss Gina sa akin, I provided her with the request.
And were you able to recover the 150,000, Mr. Ortonio?
Unfortunately, ma'am, I was not reimbursed anymore.
You were not reimbursed.
Up to today, Mr. Ortonio?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ortonio also said he did not see any official receipts for the confidential fund expenses. He explained that money was given to informants, while OVP personnel themselves bought some supplies, including medicine. The prosecution meanwhile argued that Vice President Sara Duterte did not need confidential funds for her personal security. It said any threat against the Vice President could already be covered by the intelligence operations of the AFP and PNP.
473 sundalo at pulis na ang nagbabantay sa kanya. Sahod ng Republika mula sa ibang pondo. Walang pangalawang pangulo sa kasaysayan ang nagkaroon ng ganito.
Threat against the Vice President. May alam po ba kayo? Kakaibang banta laban kay sa ikalawang Pangulo. Nung mga panahong yon na malapit sa petsang December 21 to 31.
Your Honor, I personally don't know of any information.
Escudero called out the use of what he described as inflammatory words during the trial, including scam and mastermind.
You will agree with me. This whole confidential funds matter, ang arkitekto at mastermind nito ay si Vice President Sara
Your Honor,
Duterte.
please. Your Honor, please. Objection.
Sustained. Counsel,
Mastermind. Move to strike, Your Honor.
we'll have to strike it off, Counsel. Kindly replace it with words that are more acceptable.
Based on my understanding, sir, and based on no, sir, yes, the Vice President knows about the confidential activities and how it is being implemented.
The impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte is now on day 19. The defense will begin its cross-examination of the second hostile witness, Lemuel Ortonio. Before that, the court will allow private prosecutor attorney Amando Ligutan to comment on the August 12 manifestation filed by lead defense lawyer Sheila Sison. The court may then proceed with redirect and recross examination, as well as questions from the senator judges if time permits.
And now for a legal perspective on the latest developments in Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment trial. We are now joined by Integrated Bar of the Philippines National President, Attorney Alan Panulong. Good morning to you, Attorney. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning, Pauline, and to your co-anchors. Good morning once again to all our viewers. Thank you for inviting me again to your program.
All right, so let's unpack day 18 of the impeachment trial. The spotlight was on Assistant Secretary Lemuel Ortonio. Attorney, what do you think were the glaring irregularities that the prosecution was able to flag and elicit from the testimony of Mr. Ortonio?
In yesterday's hearing, the prosecution was able to confirm that through the hostile witness, Assistant Secretary Lemuel Ortonio, that the confidential fund, which was spent in the last quarter of the year 2022, was spent for a span of 11 days. Secondly, is that it was also unearthed or again confirmed by the prosecution that there were obligations already incurred prior to the obligation already prior incurred, which is actually a violation of the COA circular. Another thing is that OAVP Assistant Secretary Ortonio also cannot confirm if there was cataclysmic, as what described by Attorney Divina Gracia, cataclysmic threat against the Vice President, which warranted the spending of the confidential fund. And that it was also further revealed or confirmed that there are main players or main personalities, two main personalities involved in the disbursement and implementation of the confidential fund, one of which is the Special Disbursement Officer in the name of Ms. Gina Acosta, who just been presented also as hostile witness, and that the implementation of that disbursed funds of confidential fund were actually implemented by the security officer in the name of Colonel Vance La Chica.
Raymond.
So these are the things that were proven by the prosecution when they presented or when they called into as witness the name of OAVP Assistant Secretary Lemuel Ortonio.
Well, Attorney, once again, Colonel Raymond La Chica was mentioned in the trial yesterday. And of course, from an ordinary perspective, ang tanong po nila dyan, bakit hindi na lang tawagin itong si Colonel Raymond La Chica para mag-testify? Because he can answer many questions doon sa ating mga tanong tungkol dito sa naging proseso. Because as Gina Acosta said, she only disbursed the money and it was La Chica who implemented it. So why do you think that the prosecution is somehow reluctant to bring in La Chica to be possible hostile witness?
Maybe in the minds of the prosecution, they were established some serious irregularities in the disbursement of the funds. So, as we all know, first they were able to establish that a confidential fund was downloaded to the office of the OAVP, and that the SDO Gina Acosta was able to encash it, and that said money was disbursed or was entrusted actually, or were transferred to another person in the name of the security officer mentioned. And another thing is that all these activities, apparently during the presentation of Ms. Gina Acosta as witness, she also confirmed that this was through the instruction of the Vice President. And that another thing is that OAVP ASEC Ortonio also confirmed this. So in trial, the parties have usually reserved witnesses. So, yes. So, say for instance, they are, if the prosecution wanted to strengthen further their position on the matter, they can actually call on La Chica. But if on their own assessment of the case, they are actually on the right track of proving betrayal of public trust, then there is no need for them to present Colonel La Chica. Because if you know, in the past few days, they were able to establish some lapses in the handling and disbursement of the confidential fund. That in itself is already a violation of the COA joint circular. So we really don't know, but maybe, as I said again, they have reserved witnesses, and they may elect to call Colonel La Chica to further clarify the matter.
Well, Attorney Tolosa also said, with regard to La Chica, that whenever you present a hostile witness, you have to tread carefully. For the public to understand, because obviously everyone wants to hear from Colonel La Chica, but what are the benefits and the risks when it comes to presenting hostile witnesses?
Well, first things first, a hostile witness is not actually your witness, because that hostile witness has loyalty to the other party. So, say, for instance, SDO Gina Acosta, who is an employee of the OAVP, do you think Gina Acosta would really be, what we call this, would endanger her principal, no? Secondly is also OABP ASEC or Tonyo. So they more or less, their testimonies that they will give will not really suit the whims and the wishes of the prosecution. That is why also in the direct examination, cross-examination style of questioning, like leading questions, are allowed to elicit a clear, to elicit information from the witness. Now, the downside of this, as I mentioned, is that they will not really fully cooperate, no? Kasi nga yung mga sagot nila minsan parang template na no? So even if they know the answer, they might probably hold it to themselves because they know that it will inculpate, or it will endanger their principal. So these are the downside of presenting a hostile witness.
But what about for the defense attorney? Should they call Colonel Raymond La Chica later on in the impeachment trial? Would it benefit their case to have him on the witness stand?
That would be the best time to prove that indeed the confidential funds were properly and in accordance with the joint circular of COA, DBM, DILG, and GCG. So if they have a very good case, no, if they think that Colonel Chica will refute or will debunk what was established by the prosecution, then there is a need for them to present Colonel Chica, because it will erase all doubts, and only La Chica would be is a competent person or competent witness who can actually explain the manner of paying those pays in the disbursement of the confidential funds. Like they have mentioned several items which were charged to confidential funds. So siya po ang magpapatunay na lehitimo lahat ng transaction. Wala ho itong tinatagong any what we call this unlawful distribution or disbursement of the funds. So for me, it would be better on the part of the defense to present him. On the other hand, as far as the prosecution is concerned, it will give them also an opportunity to test his credibility. Kung totoo ba talaga yung pinagsasabi niya, because in the cross-examination, his credibility will be tested as to how the facts transpired and how the funds were actually spent.
Well, Attorney, bottom line is, did the testimony of Ortonio yesterday actually strengthen the case of the prosecution, o may mga gaps pa na kailangan pampunan based on your legal assessment?
The prosecution achieved their purpose, because the things that they wanted to prove is that the confidential fund was actually downloaded to the office of the OAVP, as I mentioned a while ago, and that the vice president herself has knowledge of these funds, and she has instructions on the to these to her subordinate officials like the likes of Artonio and that of the SDO Gina Acosta. So these things are very crucial in proving that indeed the confidential funds were disbursed, and that as to how it was disbursed, it was again proven by the prosecution that it did not comply with the procedure, because it should be the SDO who should be disbursing all these bonds and not to entrust to another person. So you know why the intent of the law, uh, the SDO is the only authorized to disburse, because she is bonded. In the event that the money will be lost along the way, so the state can actually run after or can recoup or can get that money because it is insured, and it is no less insured by the Bureau of Treasury. So ganun po 'yon, no? Kung halimbawa na ipinasa yung, which is in this case pinasa po kay Colonel Chica, no? Which is who is actually not an even an organic employee of the OAVP. So granting we without really ano, supposing nagkaroon ng problema doon. So wala na, paano habulin ng state yun? Hindi ho ba? So ganun po 'yon.
Attorney, both hostile witnesses have now said that they consulted Colonel La Chica. I mean, there's obviously quite a bit of trust to take him at his word. We're not questioning Colonel La Chica's integrity, but what are the implications and consequences of both Acosta and Ortonio being in positions that process and supervise how public funds are spent, but did not follow through with documentation with definitive proof that the funds were spent properly? What are the implications both inside and outside the impeachment court?
Well, trust is not enough in the disbursement of funds. It has to be in full compliance with the existing COA rules and regulations. So we understand that Colonel Achica is a gentleman. He's an officer, not an ordinary officer, but he holds a high rank in the armed forces of the Philippines. But that is not enough, because the the disbursement of confidential funds has to follow joint circular issued with the COA, DBM, DILG, the GCG, and the DND. So having said that, if the disbursements were not made in accordance with that circular, so it could be a possible violation of law. So it's not enough. Trust or an integrity of a person, these are not enough. Ang hinahanap po kasi dito is paano po nag-comply, hindi po kung sino mga personalidad na involved, no? It doesn't mean that he or she is a lawyer or an officer, a doctor, or a CPA, reliable. No. Kung compliant po ba ito sa batas, compliant po ba sa circular, yun ang hinahanap po ng Commission on Audit. At yun din po ang hinahanap ng mga tao. Nag-comply ba kayo? Kung hindi kayo nag-comply, malamang it is a violation.
Well, attorney, for the third time in this impeachment trial, I believe, the prosecution used the word scam. Attorney D.V. Nagracia said that the vice president is the architect and the mastermind of the misuse of confidential funds. Of course, the defense objected to this. But what did you make of that strategy from the prosecution, and what impact will this have on the trial?
Well, it doesn't have any impact at all in the trial. What the prosecution was actually trying to portray was that this was perpetrated by by the head of the office. That was their intention, and probably the intention of the prosecution was to convey that message to the public. Take note that the impeachment trial is not only for the senator judges to appreciate, evaluate, and make decision, no, on that proceeding. Marami pong nanonood eh. So kumbaga, pinapalabas ng prosecution na, mga kababayan, ito po ay study lang. Yun. But as far as the proceeding is concerned, the defense has all the right to object thereto. Because hindi pa naman tapos eh. So why do you have to make a conclusion that this is a scam? So, ganun po 'yun.
Inappropriate po ba yun, attorney, to use words like that and to make conclusions like that in the middle of the trial?
Oh, well, really, it happened even in courts, and the judge would usually call the attention of the lawyers concerned. So, kailangan kasi mga dignified language or mga professional, the use of courteous language should be observed in the court. So, pwede namang gumamit ng other term na which is more acceptable, no, in the court proceeding, to refer to that word na scam, no? So pwede naman gumamit ng ibang term. But as I said, the prosecutor probably wanted to direct to the Filipino people who are
Yeah.
watching. Yes, that was the intention. This is a scam. It was not really intended to the senator judges. Alam naman nila kung ano yung ibig sabihin nun eh. So yun po yung, alam mo, sa trial kasi, because impeachment trial is also actually is also a trial by the people. The
Yes.
people are watching. So sila ang mismo, isa mismo sa mga huwes, no? Yung pong kanilang reaction. Kaya nga pag tuwing meron tayong mga live interviews after this interview, for sure, marami kanya-kanyang opinion yung ating
Right.
mga nanonood. They may not agree with me or some may agree. So, ganun po yun.
Well, attorney, it's good that you mentioned that this is also a court for the public because yesterday, based on the testimony of Ortonio, he said that the OVP somehow paid their informants with confidential funds to buy medicines, 'di ba? Even tables and chairs. So the question here, does this constitute a permissible confidential fund? Because on the public's perspective, sabi nila, oh, ginamit naman pala to sa sa mabuting bagay. Binigyan nga ng medicine yung mga tao. So how would you explain that, attorney?
Well, alam niyo po, ma'am, no? Nababasa ko nga sa social media yung mga comments ng mga kababayan natin na sabi nila hindi naman pala nawala yung pondo eh.
Yes.
Kasi ginamit naman pala sa medisina, ginamit naman pala sa mga bagay na ganito. Pero kung titingnan po natin, ang confidential fund po ay meron pong rules kung paano gamitin. Kung wala po doon sa rules, yung mga pwedeng paggagamitan ng confidential funds ay maliwanag po na kahit na ginawa po yun sa isang kawang-gawa na trabaho, ay bawal po yun. Hindi po siya pwede.
Well, attorney, we've also seen the prosecution, circle back to the 125 million being spent in just 11 days. But we've also heard witnesses confirm that there is nothing stated in the joint circular that bars spending the money in that amount of time. However, with that particular stretch of time also come the ARs that are signed from all over the country, different locations, over 130 locations. So what do the people need to understand as to why the prosecution keeps on focusing on this specific period of time?
Because, it was, if we go back to the testimony of SDO Gina Acosta, no? It apparently kasi, yung acknowledgement receipts or proof that it was spent within within the span of 11 days, isa lang yung nag-disburse eh. So how could you be able to be present in those places, no? Within the span of 11 days, no? Na magkakalayo ito. So it raises actually a question of the manner of disbursing it. Is it really possible to disburse that funds in that period of time for these places na magkakalayo, no? Considering our transportation, even if it took the air, if take the airplane, no? Among other things. So it raises red flag. But it doesn't mean that it was spent for 11 days, bawal na po yun, no? As what the defense was actually saying. However, they have to convince the people and the court that yes, the 11 days is possible because it is possible to disburse that because of the following. So the burden now shifts to the defense. How would they refute or debunk na naipakita nga ng prosecution na and you just spend it in the span of 11 days? How is it possible? So ngayon, nagsishift ngayon ng burden sa kanila. How can they convince the people that it is possible to uh, disburse that amount of money in just a span of 11 days? I think the defense should really do that in order to convince the public that this was properly disbursed.
Pero attorney, yung naging explanation dyan ni Mr. Ortonio was that the confidential funds were supposedly used to pay for obligations already incurred. Maybe you can help us understand what that means talaga, attorney, no? And is that a valid argument or problematic po yung ganong term nga na obligations already incurred?
Hindi lang po problematic, hindi lang po invalid, kundi bawal. Because under the joint circular, the payment of obligations already incurred is actually a reimbursement. And reimbursement under the joint circular is not allowed. So, hindi lang ho problematic, kundi bawal talaga, hindi pwede. It is not sanctioned by the by the
Joint
the
circular.
circular governing the disbursement of the funds. So yun po ang sagot doon.
So kumbaga parang trinay lang nilang gumamit ng mas magandang salita, attorney, for reimbursement. Pero bottom line din nun is, nagre-reimburse sila for something na hindi naman, di ba, ipinunto nga
Ang
rin
nangyari,
Go ahead,
yes, ang
attorney.
nangyari kasi is parang they did the documentation to fit the rules.
Yeah.
Parang gano'n, oo. So mali yun. Oo. So dapat ano ba talagang factual talaga na nangyari. That is what they have to actually comply with. Not simply to suit the rules, no? No, kasi kung kuwan at mahanap at makikita yung mga gaps or lapses po.
Well, attorney, today is supposedly the impeachment court will rule on the issue of sub judice. No? And of course, yung mga proper decorum. And parang the way we see it, parang mukhang magkakaroon ng parusa ang prosecution. Normally, ano po ba yung pinapataw na parusa sa ganon? And also, is it also fair that the impeachment court also should address yung mga senator judges din naman that they are also expected to be impartial because aminin na po natin during the impeachment trial may mga pagkakataon po na of course nakikita rin po to ng publiko na naglo-lawyer daw po yung mga defense o yung mga senator judges para sa depensa.
Yun na nga po una-una po dun sa mga senator judges. Alam niyo po sa judiciary, no? Since the impeachment court is not actually a judicial office, no? I mean, the impeachment court, yes, is not a judicial office, but the Senate functioning as a quasi-judicial entity, no? Yung pong huwes, no? Napakataas po yung requirement dyan. Kailangan talagang the judge should appear to be manifestly impartial, no? Hindi po siya partial, no? Kasi in order for justice to be secured by parties, no? In order for justice to prevail. Now, on the part of the dapat silang maging unang ehemplo, no? Kasi I agree with your observation because there are some senator judges that from the line of questioning, it appears that they are helping the parties, no? Merong isang kuan na halimbawa, yung isang party hindi niya masyadong na-establish
Yes.
yung isang fact or facts na gusto niyang maipakita sa publiko, no? Pagdating sa senator judge, mas liliwanagan pa niya because the senator judge can practically ask anything under the sun. Di katulad nung mga abogado na in the course of the direct examination, limited ka lang doon sa anong sinasabi ng ano yung kwento nung witness. Sa cross-examination, ganun din. Well, yung senator judge, yung mga tanong niya kung saan-saan pwede. So doon makikita mo na, uy, mukhang si Senator Judge A is tinutulungan ito So dapat sana sila maging unang ehemplo para po maging patas ng laban. Pangalawa, doon po sa mga abogado na kung saan ay meron pong sub judice rule, no, doon sa rules on impeachment proceeding ng Senate, dapat din po, no, maging compliant yung mga abogado natin. Kaya lang po, no, ang naintindihan po natin kasi alam niyo po hindi po katulad nating abogado or yung mga nakapag-aral ng law or yung mga closely involved with issues or cases like this na more or less naintindihan natin kung ano yung nangyayari during the impeachment proceeding. So mas maganda nga rin po sana na yung mga abogado, na-explain nila sa taong bayan kung ano ba talaga ang ibig sabihin nung mga nangyayari sa loob ng impeachment court or yeah. So kaya nga po yung sub judice na yan, no, na the rule of sub judice, medyo masalimuot, no? Kasi dapat obligation ng abogado explain, no? Without necessarily getting into the conclusion ano mangyayari, 'di ba? You just explain what transpired. Yun lang naman eh. So I think the presiding officer would be prudent also because he is also a lawyer and he understands the function of the impeachment court. So probably for me I think tingin ko baka si Attorney Virgilio Tutan might be reprimanded, no? Or he might be sternly warned that he commits the same action in the future, so a more severe penalty would be imposed upon him. So hindi rin maliwanag kasi ma'am doon sa rules on impeachment proceeding ng Senado kung ano yung parusa eh. Far as my memory is concerned, no? Wala ring kuan. Unlike sa court na pwede kang i-fine.
Right.
Sa regular court, if you cause for instance, pwedeng may fine.
Alright, so abangan po natin anong magiging desisyon ng impeachment court when it comes to that. But for now, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That was Integrated Bar of the Philippines National President, Attorney Alan Panulong. Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat at mabuhay po ang bansang Pilipinas. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
All right, well, it is day 19 of the impeachment trial against Vice President Sara Duterte, and it is now underway. Let's watch this.
The clerk of court will now call the roll.
Roll call of members. Senator Judge Aquino. Senator Judge Cayetano Alan. Senator Judge Cayetano Pia. Senator Judge De La Rosa. Sito. Senator Judge Estrada. Senator Judge Go. Senator Judge Ontiveros. Senator Judge Lacson. Senator Judge Lapid. Senator Judge Legarda. Senator Judge Marcoleta. Senator Judge Marcos. Senator Judge Padilla. Senator Judge Pangilinan. Senator Judge Soto III. Senator Judge Tulfo Erwin. Senator Judge Tulfo Rafi. Senator Judge Villanueva. Senator Judge Villar Camille. Senator Judge Villar Mark. Senator Judge Zubiri. The presiding officer, Senator Judge Escudero. The Senate President, Senator Judge Gatchalian.
With 17 Senator Judge declares the presence of a quorum. In accordance with the rules of In accordance with the rules of procedure on impeachment trials, the chair now recognizes the duly elected presiding officer to preside over the proceedings of the impeachment court.
Thank you, Mr. Senate President. If there are no objections, we shall dispense with the reading of the August 25, 2026 Journal of the Senate sitting as an impeachment court and shall as approved. The clerk of court will please call the case before the impeachment court. Kindly turn on the mic of the clerk of court.
Case number 004-2026 in the matter of impeachment trial of Vice President Cyrus Zimmerman Duterte.
Appearances of the for the parties.
Same appearance for the prosecution, Your Honor. We are ready.
Good morning, Honorable Chua. For the respondent.
Same appearance for the respondent accused. Good morning, Your Honors.
Good morning, Attorney Poa. As discussed yesterday by the presiding officer, we shall begin with a brief reply of Attorney Ligutan before the court's ruling with respect raised by the lead counsel for the respondent and some other matters that pertain similarly to that topic, and then proceed with the cross-examination of Attorney Christine and the redirect and or recross, if any.
Your Honor. Your Honor.
Yes, Honorable Chua.
I will now turn over to Attorney Ligutan for his brief reply.
Attorney Ligutan is recognized.
Your Honor.
For his hopefully brief reply. Yes, Attorney Poa.
Just before we give Attorney Ligutan his time, Your Honor, just wanted to make a quick manifestation. It was just brought to our attention yesterday that after the proceedings that we had yesterday, that an interview was given wherein I think what was discussed yesterday about the word scam, etc., was repeated during an interview. Now, while it may have been stated in a matter that's sort of a matter of factly. We do hope in the ruling of the Honorable Presiding Officer.
It
at
is
least for
included
guidance, Your
actually,
Honor.
Attorney Po.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, Attorney Ligutan.
Hello. It's working. Hello.
You are recognized, sir. You may proceed when you're ready with respect
so
to
much.
your, shall
It's
I call
brief.
it, counter manifestation.
It is brief, Your Honor.
Thank you, Attorney Ligutan. You may proceed.
A teacher, a lawyer, a rule on a Facebook post. How did we get here? Last August 12, before trial was adjourned, it was a Wednesday. Out of the blue, the defense made a manifestation, or should I say, a big issue of my Facebook post earlier that morning. My post reads, a principle all lawyers and law students know by heart. Misleading questions are not allowed, even on cross-examination. Period. The defense, it is a reaction to that viral exchange between the opposing counsel that morning. A lawyer for the defense said, in effect, that misleading questions are allowed. We all heard it. It immediately caused an uproar on social media, especially in the legal community where it is a well-entrenched rule. Misleading questions are not allowed, even on cross-examination. It is a truism as irrefutable as the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. It is a principle all lawyers and law students should know by heart. But why post it on Facebook? Your Honors, why not? Yes, I am a lawyer. But more than just a lawyer, first and foremost, I am a teacher. Isa po akong guro. Usa ko kang maestro, and I'm proud to be one. I have been a lawyer for almost 16 years, but a teacher, an educator for almost 20. At alam ng ating mga magigiting na guro sa buong kapuluan na ang pagtuturo ay likas sa ating mga guro. Ang pagtuturo, ang pagtatama ng mali, ay walang pinipiling lugar at walang pinipiling panahon. That's why I made that post. I was concerned that the statement made in open court that misleading questions are allowed will go unchecked. My teacher's instinct kicked in. I wanted the students I left in Cebu, especially in the University Recoleto School of Law, where I have been teaching for the past 15 years, and recently in the University of Cebu School of Law, and in Diliman, my alma mater, the University of the Philippines College of Law, and all law students out there. I want them to know that a teacher statement in open court, and he is correcting that mistake on Facebook, as I have been doing the past years. To the defense, I shall not name names. I will not put you on the spot. But the post is not about you. It's not personal. It is about the law that we all adhere to. It is about what we teach the public who are watching our trial. correcting a mistake is never wrong. Doing it while a hearing is ongoing online does not make it not right. Ang pagtatama ng mali ay kailanman hindi ipinagbabawal kahit sa loob ng impeachment court ito. Now the defense said they found it troubling or invalid for a prosecution lawyer like me to, quote, do this, unquote, in the middle of a courtroom hearing. But do what? Correct a wrong? On the contrary, Your Honors, what is more troubling is for the defense not to admit their mistake and call out a lawyer, a teacher who just stated what is correct in his own time and in his own Facebook account. What is troubling is if we turn a correction of a mistake by one side into a shield from fair criticism for the other. Now the defense is asking this court to act on my post. It is elevating it to a serious courtroom violation. But what did I violate? I did not discuss the merits of the case. I did not discuss the strength or the weakness of the oral arguments or evidence of either side. I only stated, without mentioning any name, using the most neutral of font black and gray, without adding any emoticon, without splicing anything. What the rules of procedure simply provide, that misleading questions are not allowed, even on cross-examination. Your Honors, we in the prosecution also have rights. I, for one, did not surrender my freedom to teach and to enlighten when I decided to participate in this trial. Patuloy po ako magiging guro kahit sa loob ng impeachment court na ito. Your Honors, the defense mentioned humility, that I should have been humble enough not to post that now viral statement. Your Honors, being a provinciano from Leyte, Samar, and Cebu, and coming from a middle-income family born without a famous family name, who had to compete for his spot in this capital, I know a thing or two about humility. The defense cannot lecture me on humility. If there's somebody who needs to be reminded about humility, it's them, the defense. It is the opposite of humility. It is pride, not to admit a mistake, or worse, call out someone who simply corrected that mistake. Good morning.
That does not fall under my definition of brief, counsel, but we will take it nevertheless. For the record, before the chair makes its ruling on the TSN says, Attorney Kapunan, leading, and then she corrected herself, misleading questions are not allowed on cross. Attorney Ferrer, she said they are allowed. Now, the TSN cannot possibly cover the overlapping voices, if at all. So most likely what happened, although we will check the video, would be Attorney Ferrer commenting on the earlier statement run by Attorney Gapunan and changed leading to misleading. Perhaps Attorney Ferrer was referring to leading questions and not misleading questions. But having said that, nevertheless, the court will include that as part of its ruling, with one caveat, Attorney Ligutan. While you do not remove your hat as a teacher wherever you go, the same is true with this representation, teaching as well. Under the rules of the Senate, unfortunately, you have to unbundle it. You have to decouple it. Under the rules of the Senate, if you are counsel for the parties, you cannot comment on the merits outside of a fair and true report of what happened. In this case, based on the TSN, I am not sure of the accuracy, given that the statements made were pertain to both leading questions. Number two, it still does not take away, your being a teacher, does not take away your responsibility under the CIPRA to a fellow lawyer who you are jousting with or arguing with or competing against this impeachment court. The remarks of the good gentleman, the Attorney Ligutan, the counsel for the panel of prosecutors, is noted and it will be entered into records. Thank you, sir. Chair will now make its ruling with the permission from the rostrum because it's difficult to read while sitting down a long ruling. You may sit down, Attorney Chua, for a bit. This will take some time. With the permission of the Senator Judges. The Chair wishes to address certain matters as it is necessary to protect the integrity of this trial. It has come to the Chair's attention over time that public statements attributed to persons covered by the rules made in interviews or in social media appear to concern the evidence, the credibility of witnesses, and issues pending before this court, which may fall within the prohibition under Rule 18 of this court. Although the immediate matter arose from statements and conduct involving respective counsel last August 12, it raises broader concerns affecting the impartiality, decorum, and impeachment court. Before imposing or enforcing standards of restraint upon the parties and their own counsel, the court must first look inward and put its own house in order. The Chair shall therefore resolve these matters in three parts. First, the duties of impartiality and decorum incumbent upon senator judges. Second, the scope, coverage, and prospective enforcement of Rule 18. Third, specific guidelines governing compliance with Rule 18. First, senator judges' impartiality, decorum, and the internal remedy. The Chair begins where institutional discipline must always begin, with the court itself. The restraint, impartiality, and decorum demanded of the parties and their counsel must first be exemplified who sit in judgment. As senator judges, let us keep in mind our oath, quote, to do impartial justice according to the Constitution and the laws of the Philippines, close quotations. And the requirement under Rule 3 of the Rules of Impeachment to observe political neutrality therein defined as, quote, the exercise of a public's official duty without unfair discrimination and regardless of or preference. The Chair likewise cites the relevant provisions of the 2025 Code of Judicial Conduct and Accountability, or CIPRA, on impartiality and the sub judice rule. Canon 3, Section 10 provides, quote, during the pendency of a case, a judge shall not knowingly make any comment in and out of court that could reasonably be expected or perceived to affect its outcome, impair the fairness, or diminish the public's confidence in the court's impartiality. Canon 4, Section 24 provides, quote, a judge shall not engage or use any form of expression which tends to violate or has the effect of violating the sub judice principle, provoke or inflame divisive and contentious issues of public concern, or project an image not compatible with the dignity of their position. As a whole, these principles remind us of our duty to preserve the impartiality of this court and the fairness of these proceedings. As the court said in People versus Court of Appeals, GR number 118882, this court has repeatedly and consistently demanded, quote, the cold neutrality of an impartial judge as the indispensable imperative of due process. Judicial proceedings are not orchestrated plays in which the parties are supposed to make and reach the denouncement according to a prepared script. There is no writer to foreordain the ending. Close quotation. Also in Berso versus Rabe, AM number RT 21010, a judge must not only be impartial, but must also appear to be impartial, as an added assurance to the parties that his decision will be just. Litigants are entitled to no less than that. For avoidance of doubt, this shall not prevent senator judges from examining the evidence where the examination belongs during the proceedings and on the record. The Supreme Court in People versus Gambor, GR 152183, said, the trial judge is accorded a reasonable leeway in putting such questions to witnesses as may be essential to elicit relevant facts, to make the record speak the truth. A judge may examine or cross-examine. He may propound questions to test the credibility of the witness and to extract the truth. He may seek to draw out relevant and material testimony, though that testimony may tend to support or rebut the position taken by one or the other party. It cannot be taken against him if the clarificatory questions he propounds happen to reveal certain truths which tend to destroy the party. Taken together, Rule 17 and the Gambor case confirm that a searching question is not partial merely because the answer may aid one side or weaken the other. The prosecution and the respondent's counsel must be prepared to answer such questions. The inquiry must remain relevant, material, fair, and directed toward clarification of truth. It must not devolve into a speech, harassment, partisan advocacy, or an announcement of a conclusion already reached. The line is clear. Senator judges may test the evidence here on record, exercising the cold neutrality of an impartial judge. When constituted as an impeachment court, the Senate does not cast aside the discipline of parliamentary practice, except where the specific rules on impeachment or the adjudicative nature of these proceedings require otherwise. The rules of the Senate established parliamentary precedents and courtesies of the chamber continue to bind every member sitting as senator judge under Rule 34, Section 4 of the Rules of the Senate. Deem acts or language that offend a senator or any public institution or third party to be unparliamentary and prohibit the use of offensive and improper language against another senator or public institution or third party. Henceforth, I hope senator judges shall refrain from unparliamentary remarks, personal attacks, imputations of improper motive, and other language incompatible with the dignity and of parliamentary courtesy to other people. The chair will at all times extend to his fellow senator judges the courtesy befitting equals and reasonable latitude that serious deliberation requires. Differences in judgments and vigor in debate are to be expected and shall, as far as practicable, be met with patience, flexibility, and respect. Should circumstance so require, the chair will not hesitate to enforce the rules of this impeachment court, the rules of the Senate, particularly sections 95 and 96. In this chamber, firmness need not be unkind, nor courtesy come at the expense of duty. Both serve the same end, the fair and honorable administration of justice. Further, where a senator judge is alleged to have violated the impeachment oath, Rule 18 or any other applicable rule of the Senate, an available institutional remedy within the Senate is the filing or referral of an ethics complaint to the Senate Committee on Ethics and Privileges in accordance with the internal rules of the Senate. Under Rule 10, Section 1316 of the Rules of the Senate, the Committee on Ethics has jurisdiction over all matters relating to the conduct, rights, privileges, safety, dignity, integrity, and reputation and its members. Any disciplinary action remains for the Senate to determine under Article 6, Section 16.3 of the Constitution and applicable rules. This shall not be a proper subject matter to be taken up within this impeachment court so as not to divert the attention from the impeachment trial against the respondent in this case. Accordingly, the chair reminds all senators to observe the impartiality and political neutrality required by their oath and the rules. Second, to observe the parliamentary rules, precedents, and courtesies of the Senate and refrain from unparliamentary, offensive, or improper remarks. Third, to exercise their authority under Rule 17 to question witnesses, prosecutors, and counsels for the respondent and the prosecutor during the proceedings on the record instead of through commentaries in social media. Second ruling, scope coverage and prospective enforcement. Note on the statement prospective enforcement. Having addressed the conduct expected of senator judges, the chair now turns to Rule 18 and the persons expressly covered by it. The chair makes this ruling not only in response to the manifestation and motion made by counsel for the respondent, Attorney Sheila Sison, on August 12, of Attorney Ligutan's explanation, but also on the basis of the chair's independent findings of seeming violations of Rule 18. These incidents come after the chair's earlier advice to both panels to designate the respective spokespersons so that the necessary and appropriate communications may be made within the limits prescribed by the rules. Since that advice has not been fully observed, the chair now finds it necessary to restate and strictly enforce those restrictions. Article provides, the presiding officer, the members of the Senate, shall refrain from making any comments and disclosures in public pertaining to the merits of a pending impeachment trial. The same shall likewise apply to the prosecutors, the person impeached, and their respective counsel and witnesses. This rule exists to balance the public's right to information on matters of public concern with the need to protect the integrity of the proceedings from public. The rules of court apply only suppletorily to these proceedings. When the rules on impeachment expressly and specifically govern a matter, they control. Since Rule 18 directly governs public comments and disclosures pertaining to the merits of the pending impeachment trial, it is for this court, in the exercise of its authority and sound discretion, to determine whether a particular statement violates that rule. Henceforth, with respect to prior statements or conduct covered by Rule 18, the court shall extend grace, exercise liberality, and wipe the slate clean, tabula rasa, so to speak. From this point forward, however, Rule 18 shall be strictly enforced and be given full force and effect. Accordingly, the chair hereby strictly enjoins all persons covered by Rule 18. You know who you are and know who you are, from making public statements or otherwise discussing, sharing, or endorsing comments pertaining to the merits of this pending impeachment trial, and from engaging in trial by publicity, as they directly threaten the independence of the court, degrade the dignity of the tribunal, and risk turning it into a circus, and weaponize the media to substitute public outrage or actual evidence. We are in receipt of the appearances of... So, ang covered po ng Rule 18 would be all those who appeared, both from the panel of prosecutors and the counsel for the panel of prosecutors. Chair earlier reminded the parties, designate a specific spokesperson. Wala pong problema kung hindi naman siya kasama sa panel. Walang problema kung hindi siya kasama for the panel of prosecutors. The spokespersons are free to say whatever they want to say, but not, and there are limitations insofar as the panel of prosecutors and the counsel for the panel of prosecutors is concerned. Clearly, up to today, the spokesperson of both parties are still part of the counsel for the parties, some than others. So without enumerating the counsels where this rule applies, I think you know who you are, given the entries of appearance you've already made. These restrictions apply with particular force not only to counsel for the parties, but also to us, senator judges, and all other persons whose public statements are governed by Rule 18. Rule 18 makes specific mention of the respondent, mention of the complainants in this case, given the public nature of this case. So outside of the senator judges, outside of the counsels for the parties, particularly mentioned would be the respondent herself, as well as the witnesses called. Third ruling, guidelines for compliance with Rule 18. To ensure a common standard, the chair now states the guidelines governing compliance with Rule 18. That line is crossed when a public comment by any person falls within the phrase, quote, pertaining to the merits. In this regard, jurisprudence has consistently distinguished matters going into the merits of a case from those which are merely procedural, incidental, or collateral. In De Leon versus Deliana, GR 21-2277, as a technical legal term, merits has been defined in law dictionaries as a matter of substance in law as distinguished from matter of form, and thus the grounds of action or defense, in contradistinction to some technical or collateral matter raised in the course of a suit. In Badoy versus Magdoza Malagar, AM number 220916 SC, comments on the merits of the case may refer to the credibility of witnesses, the character of the accused, the soundness of alibis offered, the relevance of the evidence presented, and generally any other comment bearing on the guilt or innocence of the accused. Pursuant to the en banc case of in-rep published threats hurled by Attorney De Vera, AM number 011203 SC, number 1, no party shall make public comments, statements, in rhetorical questions that, number 1, prejudge the issue to predict the outcome of the trial. Number 2, question pending rulings. Number 3, substitute media pressure for evidence. Number 4, promote distrust and undermine public confidence in the court by creating the impression that the court cannot be trusted to resolve the case impartially and violate the right of the parties to have their case tried fairly by an independent tribunal uninfluenced by public clamor and other extraneous influences. For purposes of this trial, a statement pertains to the merits when viewed in the full context. It evaluates in its full context. It evaluates a disputed fact, the credibility of a witness, the relevance or probative value, weight, or sufficiency of a assessment as to the legal viability of an article of impeachment, or a substantive defense advocates a particular disposition of the charges or announces or forecasts the ultimate vote. Conversely, this qualified privilege of a fair and true report regarding these proceedings as affirmed in the Supreme Court in ABS-CBN versus Ampatuan GR number 227004, based on the jurisprudential standard derived from Article 35 of the revised. A fair and true report means a neutral, objective, and accurate recounting of the proceedings made in good faith without any comments or remarks. For the guidance of all the parties concerned, the Chair now issues the procedural guidelines for violations of Rule 18. The impeachment court will exercise its powers summarily under Rule 5, adhering strictly to the due process parameters set by the Supreme Court. First, a 24-hour show cause order. No oral accusation or press pronouncement shall precede the formal charge. Any party cited for accusation will be issued a written show cause order, either motu proprio or upon motion by either party, and will be given exactly 24 hours to submit a verified written answer. Pursuant to the Supreme Court's en banc doctrine in Zaldivar versus Sandigan Bayan, GR number 79690-707, due process in disciplinary proceedings against lawyers and parties does not require a trial-type formal hearing. The presiding officer will rule summarily submitted pleadings upon the lapse of the 24-hour period, subject to appeal or reconsideration by any member of the court. Now, the burden of proof. Pursuant to Stratcom Corp. versus Etong, GR number 190980, and Webb versus Gatula, GR number 194469, any punitive sanction requires that, quote, a person's act must be done willfully or for an illegitimate or improper purpose. Thus, the good faith or lack thereof of the person being cited in contempt should be considered. Hence, the contemnor is presumed innocent, and the burden of proving that the contemnor is guilty of contempt lies with the mover. For violations of Rule 18, the court shall follow a two-strike rule. Violations will be met with a strict graduated penalty system. First offense, public reprimand and admonition. The penalty is a severe reprimand and stern admonition in open court, placed permanently on the record as a final warning. Second offense, a monetary fine. Penalty. Pursuant to the prescribed ceiling under Rule 71, Section 7 of the court will impose a maximum statutory fine of 30,000 per violation, pesos that is. Furthermore, exercising the court's inherent case management powers under Rule 4, 5, 6, and 8 to preserve the orderly proceedings, the offending lawyer may also be subjected to a defined prospective restriction on speaking, objecting, or examining witnesses on the floor. Each subsequent violation of Rule 18 shall be punished the same way as a second offense, third, fourth, so on, with a fine of 30,000 pesos. In all cases wherein a member of the bar is concerned, independently, pursuant to the case of Inre Almacen, the certified incident will be transmitted and formal referral will be made to the Office of the Bar Confidant, the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, and/or the Supreme Court for possible disciplinary sanction regarding the person's license to practice. The court also reminds respective counsels of the parties that CIPRA Canon 2, Section 19 prohibits lawyers to comment or publicize opinion pertaining to a pending proceeding in a manner that sway public perception, influence the tribunal, or create a widespread perception of guilt or innocence. CIPRA likewise requires professional responsibility on the use of social media and prohibits the dissemination of false or unverified claims or disinformation. Rule 18 does not, by its terms, cover outside observers or spokespersons who are of record. Such persons, however, remain subject, when applicable, to the rules on indirect contempt, and if they are members of the bar, to the CIPRA. Counsel of record must litigate their respective causes before the court, not in the court of public opinion, through interviews, social media posts, or publicly generated, authorized, encouraged, or disseminated through surrogates. Their cake and eat it too. They cannot invoke the authority of this court while simultaneously seeking to influence the proceedings through extrajudicial publicity. In fact, the chair has in its hands certain statements to cite as examples, without naming names, but you know who you are, who mentioned these quotes. Quote, hindi naman pinag-uusapan dito yung kontrata, pinag-uusapan dito yung banta. Yung banta. May nagbanta talaga at si Vice President yon, hindi ba? If this was stated by a spokesperson or any third-party observer, it would not have been a problem. But this was stated by a counsel of record. Actually, more specifically, one of the counsels for the private prosecutors. Quote, the country witnessed what I have been saying all along. The complaint by evidence. An impeachment proceeding should be grounded on credible evidence, not speculation, manufactured narratives, or unsupported allegations. The rule of law depends on facts, not fiction. Quote, meron ba talagang kinausap na mamamatay tao? Meron ba talagang mamamatay tao? Napakaliwanag na ho sa sagot dyan. Meron. Ano ho ang prueba natin? Yung tinatawag interest ng Vice President. Again, to reiterate, if this was stated by any other party or person, not a member of the panel of prosecutors, not counsel for prosecutors, not the counsel for respondents, it would have been perfectly okay. But since this was stated by one of those covered by Rule 18, it is covered by Rule 18. Since na-establish na namin yung hinahanap namin doon sa talagang testigo lamang, 3 testigo lamang, finorgo na namin yung ibang mga testigo, na-establish na namin ang gusto namin i-establish sa Article 4. Quote, itong mga bank records don't lie. Hindi na ito pwedeng maspin. Yan at sabihin gawa-gawa lang ng prosecution ng gobyerno. Itong mga usapin na unexplained wealth ng Vice President. Quote, it is clear that the Vice President had a direct hand on it. No, not just the use, but the way it was liquidated. Quote, yun pong binabanggit ni Attorney Capona na scam. Yun pa rin ho yun. Pagtingin ho namin na inilantad ngayong araw po na ito, yung pagiging scam, iskandalo nitong confidential fund misuse. Quote, malinaw din na sinasabi niya na hindi kailangan sabihin pa na ginamit ito para sa personal na paggamit ng Vice President. Confidential funds na ito. Dahil sabi nga niya, nakalagay na yan doon sa joint circular. Quote, siguro naman, it's plain for everybody to see yung conclusion, no? Yung conclusion na tama ba yung pinagamitan ng confidential fund? Hanggang kailan ba yung pagpipikit mata natin sa isang bagay na napakaklaro naman? Quote, to be fair, let's wait for their defense if they have any or their evidence. As we are concerned, our position, you violated the public trust. Fraudulent liquidation, so you have violated the law. You already betrayed the people's trust. Quote, sa totoo lang po, yung testimonya ni Ms. Acosta na nagsasabing si Pangalawang Pangulo Duterte mismo ang nagbigay ng utos na ibigay ang 125 kay Colonel Lachica. Sapat na ho yun doon sa pagpapakita ng maling paggamit ng confidential fund. Quote, to us, it's a scam that was masterminded by the President. Again, these are statements that may be said by any third party, but certainly not by any of the counsel for the parties. I would like to give credit where credit is due as well. There are some counsel for the parties who have been very circumspect with their statements. And you also know who you are. After hearing these examples, no person covered by Rule 8 claim uncertainty as to where the line is drawn. The statements read into the record are illustrative, not exhaustive. They are cited not to punish past conduct, but to give clear and fair warning of the standard that shall govern henceforth. As the Chair stated in my opening statement, the discretion entrusted to this court will be exercised with a steady hand, liberal where justice permits, but exact fairness, due process, and the integrity of these proceedings demand. Consistent with that commitment, the court will strictly enforce the restraint required of counsel outside the courtroom, while ensuring that within the courtroom, counsel are afforded reasonable latitude to present their arguments, challenge rulings through proper channels, and advocate their respective causes fully and this discretion does not require counsel to remain silent within the impeachment court. The Supreme Court ruled in ABS-CBN Corporation v. Ampatuan, as earlier cited, that the court recognizes that lawyers may criticize the courts and their decisions, subject to the responsibilities they bear as officers of the court. Such criticism, however, must be legitimate, made in good faith, for the proper administration of justice. Rule 18 closes the avenue of litigating the merits through interviews, social media, and the court of public opinion. It does not close the courtroom to legitimate advocacy. If counsel believes that the ruling is erroneous, that a proceeding has become unfair, or that conduct affecting the trial requires correction, the proper course is for the court where it may be heard, answered, and resolved on the record. Rule 18 demands restraint beyond these walls. It does not command silence within them. This court will not close the door to trial by publicity. Rather, this court will close the door to trial by publicity, but it will keep the courtroom open to the disciplined advocacy which evidence is tested, error is corrected, and justice is done. Within these chambers, counsel shall be afforded reasonable latitude to present their theory of the case and vigorously test the evidence. Emotions may run high and frustrations may arise in the course of adversarial proceedings, but neither excuses a departure from the restraint and decorum of officers of the court. The case of Navarrete versus Court of Appeals, GR number 124245, mirrors the exact situation that has transpired before the court. Quote, with respect to the words swindlers, plunderers, stupid, and bastards, uttered by private respondent in the course of her testimony. We are inclined to disagree that such language is too ignominious and degrading a lawyer to say to a fellow lawyer in the courtroom. In Baltao versus Falsis III, AC number 14443, the court said, while a lawyer is entitled to present his case with vigor and courage, such enthusiasm does not justify the use of offensive, abusive language. Abounds with countless possibilities for one to be emphatic but respectful, convincing but not derogatory, illuminating but not offensive. The latitude afforded to counsel is not a license to substitute inflammatory, intemperate, or undignified characterizations for proof. Consistent with the chair's earlier ruling, the term scam, mastermind, modus operandi, as used stand stricken from the record. Counsel remain free to advance the factual and legal theories underlying their positions, but they must do so through evidence, reasoned argument, and court-appropriate language, not through expressions that prejudge disputed facts, attribute wrongdoing not yet established, cast offensive personalities upon others, or needlessly inflame language uttered in the presence of the court that amounts to disrespect, offensive personalities, or misbehavior that obstructs or interrupts the proceedings may, when the applicable threshold is met, be dealt with as direct contempt under the rules on impeachment, with Rule 71, Section 1 of the rules applying suppletorily. Whether or not such language rises to the level of direct contempt, counsel remain independent to observe courtesy and civility and the use of dignified language in all their professional dealings, even as adversaries. This brings the chair to the relevant provisions of the CIPRA independently of Rule 18, Canon 2 of the CIPRA requires every lawyer at all times to observe respect and courtesy in personal and professional dealings. Canon 2, Section 2 further requires lawyers to act with courtesy, civility, fairness, and candor towards fellow lawyers. These duties govern how counsel treat one another both in and outside the courtroom. Canon 2, Section 4 likewise requires dignified language in all personal and professional dealings and prohibits abusive, intemperate, offensive, or otherwise improper language, whether oral or written, and whether made through traditional, electronic, mass, or social. For the avoidance of doubt, Rule 18 applies only to the persons expressly covered therein: the presiding officer, the senator judges, the prosecutors, the person impeached, and their respective counsel and witnesses. With respect to counsel, Rule 18 applies specifically to those who have formally entered their appearance before the impeachment court. Separately, when a spokesperson is a member of the bar, but has not her appearance, the relevant provisions on indirect contempt under Rule 71, Revised Rules of Court, and when warranted, the CIPRA shall nonetheless apply to said person. In any case, this shall be without prejudice to any recourse to Rule 71, Revised Rules of Court, with respect to any person who may commit indirect contempt against the impeachment court not covered by Rule 18. Accordingly, the chair hereby declares, number 1, directing all persons covered by Rule 18 to refrain from making, sharing, endorsing, or otherwise amplifying any public statement concerning the merits of the pending trial. Counsel for both parties are further directed to observe the applicable provisions of CIPRA. Number 2, reiterates the chair's suggestion that each party consider appointing a spokesperson who is not a member of their legal team, or if they are, for it to be clear to them, shall apply to them, given that they are counsel for the parties strictly. If the parties elect to retain their current spokespersons, the Rule 18 shall be strictly applied as to them. The court further advises respective counsel that the violation of this order may carry a separate form of, may carry consequences. Where the same conduct appears to violate CIPRA, the chair may direct the clerk to transmit the certified copy of the pertinent order, transcript, and records to the Supreme Court or the Office of the Bar Confidant for whatever action the Supreme Court may deem proper. Such transmittal is a referral, not a finding or penalty of professional discipline. Disciplinary jurisdiction over members of the bar still remain with the Supreme Court. Further, for avoid a referral through the Office of the Bar Confident shall not rest on an alleged violation of Rule 18 standing alone. Such referral may concern other conduct outside of Rule 18 unbecoming of a member of the bar. The chair then issues this final warning: on any willful disobedience of this order, it shall be dealt with accordingly henceforth. Describes the standards governing future conduct and does not by itself adjudge any identified person guilty of contempt or liable for a professional violation. The chair closes with separate reminders to the prosecution, counsel for the respondent, and senator judges. To the prosecution, the primary duty of a public prosecutor is not to convict, but to see to it that justice is done. This duty is expressly stated in Canon 2, Section 31 of CIPRA, and echoed in Attorney Francisco versus Mann, AC 13035. The prosecution's object must therefore be the just resolution of the case, not victory at all costs. This obligation governs not only the evidence and arguments presented before the court, but also counsel's conduct outside of it. To the respondent and her counsel, the duty of defense counsel is not to secure an acquittal at all costs. In People of the Philippines versus XXX, GR number 245926, the Supreme Court reminded counsel for the accused of their fiduciary duty to provide competent, efficient, conscientious, and diligent representation. Under the same reason, counsel for respondent must faithfully protect their client's constitutional and procedural rights, rigorously test the prosecution's evidence, prosecution to the burden of proof governing these proceedings, while remaining within the bounds of the law, ethics, and the lawful orders of this court. To my fellow senator judges, including this representation, the chair adopts the reminder in Webb versus De Leon, GR numbers 1234 and 1245. Quote, more than convicting the guilty and acquitting the innocent, the business of this court is to assure fulfillment of the promise that justice shall be done and is done, and that the only way for this court to obtain an acquittal, from the bar of public opinion. That obligation rests upon every senator judge to decide solely upon the record, under the Constitution and under our rules, and in a manner worthy of the confidence of the people to whom this court is ultimately accountable. Thank you, and we may proceed with the... Sorry, ma'am.
Your Honor.
Before recognizing the Honorable Chua, Chair would like to instruct the Clerk of Court through the OSA to kindly situate Mr. Ortonio to the witness stand. Yes, Honorable Chua.
Your Honor, may I now turn over to the counsel for the prosecution, Attorney.
Attorney May is recognized, and also, before recognizing Attorney Christine.
We will just ask for Attorney Christine Ferrer to be recognized, Your Honor.
Yes, Attorney Christine and Attorney May then. Ginoong Ortonio, kayo po ay patuloy na tetestigo sa ilalim ng nauna niyong panunumpa po. Kung saan nanumpa kayo magsasabi ng katotohanan at pawang katotohanan lamang. Naunawaan po niyan?
Yes po, Your Honor.
Read now with cross. Attorney Christine, you ready?
Your Honor, if I may be recognized.
Yes, Attorney May.
Your Honor, before the defense counsel proceeds with their cross-examination, the prosecution respectfully moves that the defense be directed to conduct its cross-examination in a non-leading question form, Your Honor. Yesterday, Your Honor, this honorable court declared Mr. Ortonio a hostile witness pursuant to Rule 132, Section 13 of the Rules of Court. And in so ruling, effectively, this honorable court also declared that this witness is aligned with the respondent. Now, Your Honor, the permission to conduct leading, the permission to propound leading questions on cross-examination under Rule 132, Section 10A of the Rules of Court rests solely on the presumption that the interest of the witness to be cross-examined is hostile or is adverse to the cross-examiner, making it difficult for to put into the mouth of the witness words that he expect to be elicited. Now that presumption, Your Honor, has already been overcome by the declaration of this honorable court. So what we expect, Your Honor, is merely cross-examination in form but not in substance. Because in substance, Your Honor, the cross-examination would effectively be like the respondent herself, the respondent cross-examining or direct examining, conducting a direct examination of her very own Assistant Chief of Staff. Last Monday, Your Honor, we witnessed how the defense, under the guise of cross-examination, supplying testimonies to the witness, Ms. Gina Acosta, and merely expecting her to supply yes to each and every question, Your Honor. And that sought to be prevented by the rule against leading questions on direct examination. Your Honor, I understand before I'm lectured on the contents of the rules of court, I'm very much aware of what the rules of court provide. But I'm also very much aware, Your Honor, that under the rules of this honorable court, the rules of court is merely suppletory in application. And in fact, the presiding officer is granted leeway to rule on every matter of evidence.
Comment, Attorney Christine.
Yes, Your Honor. Rule 132 of the Rules of Court does not convert a hostile witness into as our own witness, Your Honor. So we are not obliged to ask direct examination questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
If I may, Your Honor.
Short reply, and so replying, Attorney May, kindly cite a legal basis outside of the rules of court, since you said it's not in the rules of court.
Your Honor, I'm citing the very own rules of this honorable court, saying that the rules of court is merely suppletory in application, and it will be the presiding officer who will be deciding on matters of evidence. And early in the proceedings, Your Honor, if I remember correctly, two senator judges encouraged this honorable court to look beyond the wordings of the law and consider the intent for its application.
That it, Attorney May?
Yes, Your Honor.
Chair will make a ruling. Rules of court, although it has merely supplementary application to these rules, nevertheless do apply. And the rules of court state specifically that leading question, cross-examination without any exception nor any limitation. And as held in the Bolos case, there is no need to interpret the rules in case where there is no doubt, and the rule is quite specifically clear. Number two, we already have a precedent, at least with respect to the previous witness declared as a hostile witness in the person of Gina Acosta, where the court allowed counsel for the respondent to ask questions. You shall be accorded the same privilege, Attorney May, on the part of the prosecution, should the respondent rather present a hostile witness during the presentation of their evidence in chief. The court shall apply the rule equally. So ordered.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You may proceed, Attorney Attorney Christine.
Yes, Your Honor.
When you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Before I start with my cross-examination, just to put the record straight, Your Honor, when I said they are allowed, I was referring to leading questions, Your Honor, because the journal dated August 12, 2020, that I was indeed asking a leading question before Attorney Kapunan objected, Your Honor. So if we take a look at it, with all due respect, the objection was even improper at that time, Your Honor. So, but I want that issue to be closed.
That was similarly pointed out by the presiding officer, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sorry, Your Honor, before I proceed, may may my colleague be recognized, Your Honor, Attorney
Of
Capone.
course. Lorna.
Your Honor, please, first of all, I'd like to commend the presiding justice. Very clear. The ruling on sub judice is very clear, and we will take it with strict compliance, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counsel.
I'd like to manifest, though, that, again, the statement of counsel, because it was very clear, and the transcripts will show that the immediate phrase which led to my remark was not about leading, it was about misleading, Your Honor. If I heard it, if the whole legal profession heard it, if this courtroom heard it, if the outside audience heard it, then it must be, it is what it is. She had said misleading is allowed, and I responded to that, and I'd like that to be on record, Your Honor. Mislead again this honorable court. Thank you.
Your Honor,
Without the chair already made a ruling earlier regarding this matter brought about by the lead counsel, in lieu of that, the chair will simply furnish the parties with a copy of the TSN, wherein, I will quote again for the record, for the last time, and then we proceed with cross. It's already 11. Attorney Kapunan, leading, misleading questions are not allowed on cross. Attorney Ferrer, this is what the transcript says, and it has no reference to Attorney Ferrer stating specifically that misleading questions are allowed, and perhaps the confusion arose with respect to the TSN, again, not being able to capture the perhaps overlapping statements made by both counsels, and we should leave it at that already, counsels, and move on.
thank you, Your Honor.
So, when you're ready, no more manifestations, Attorney Christine?
None, Your Honor. We will
Proceed
just,
to cross.
Yes, proceed to cross.
Attorney May, you shall be the counsel for the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you may proceed, ma'am, when you're ready.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ma'am Maing Buntag.
Earlier, you said or you confirmed that no PFP or the no PFP was attached to the August 2022 letter request of the OVP to the DBM. Do you?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct, ma'am.
Okay. And the reason for this was because at that time, it is not being required by the joint circular to attach the PFP to that letter.
Based on my understanding, ma'am, attaching the PFP is not required to the letter request, ma'am.
Thank you. Nonetheless, when the DBM asked for documents in response to that request, you complied and submitted documents, correct?
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
And you submitted those documents through your letter dated September 2022.
Yes, through our transmittal letter to the DBM.
Thank you. And the DBM, in fact, accepted your subsequent transmittal.
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
And the DBM did not say that those documents which you transmitted on September 9, 2022 were not compliant with the joint circular or with the law.
We did not receive any comment, ma'am, regarding the submitted PFP.
And the DBM, in fact, did not reject your submission.
No any comment from the DBM.
And you will confirm also that the DBM even recommended the approval of your request to the Office of the President after your submission of those documents, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct, ma'am.
And your request for additional budget was actually approved by the Office of the President.
That's correct, ma'am.
And the process of approving your request for additional budget, no issue whatsoever was raised by either the DBM or the Office of the President regarding the documents that you submitted.
We did not receive any comment regarding the submissions that we've made.
Thank you. You were also asked yesterday regarding the good governance program that was mentioned in the PFP for the fourth quarter of 2022. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
And as someone who supervises the Administrative and Financial Management Office of the OVP, you confirmed that the confidential fund quarter of 2022 was requested to ensure the safe implementation of the OVP's good governance program.
That's correct, ma'am.
And the confidential funds were not used to fund the good governance program in itself, but the implementation thereof.
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
Go to the 2023 PFP, which I assume you also recall. The 2023 PFP indicated that the phrase socio-economic program delivery instead of good governance program. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
And the socio-economic program delivery is a program of the OVP 23.
Yes, yun po yung parang encompassing program title for all the projects of the OVP
For the year 2023.
for the year 2023.
Again, the confidential funds for the year 2023 were not used to fund the
Objection.
socio-economic program itself.
This time, Your Honor, I will have to object.
Not yet done, Your Honor, with
Not yet?
question. Yes.
Kindly finish your question, Counsel.
Yes, Your Honor. The confidential funds for the year 2023 to fund the socio-economic program itself, but the safe implementation thereof.
Your
Yes,
Honor, I will
that's
have to
correct.
object.
For the
Your Honor, we
prosecution,
would like to-
before the witness answers, the answer of the witness is stricken off. Yes.
Yes, Your Honor. The question, this witness, Your Honor, based on his answers yesterday, is incompetent to testify on that. Why do I say that, Your Honor? First, this witness admitted yesterday was the Vice President herself who requested the confidential funds. And second, Your Honor, he himself explained that he had no participation whatsoever in the disbursement of said confidential funds. So this witness, Your Honor, by his own admission, is incompetent to testify where the confidential funds were spent or what the confidential funds was spent on. Or where.
Quick reply, Your Honor.
Yes, Attorney May.
Yesterday, yes, the witness also testified that he is the Administrative and Financial Management Officer. Your Honor, he is the supervising officer of the Administrative and Financial Management Office of the OVP. All budgets, as a general rule, are being approved by him, Your Honor, and he in fact participated in the request for the confidential funds in the year 2022, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if I may just make a very quick rebuttal.
Before the chair makes a ruling, yes.
Your Honor, we've heard it straight from the horse's mouth. The statement of this witness yesterday was that that was the general rule. Since that is merely the general rule, there are exceptions. And he also mentioned, Your Honor, that confidential funds is not among that went through him.
Your Honor, quick reply.
We've dealt this. Too many exchanges already, counsels. If the witness knows, he may respond. And as you very well know, Attorney May, sometimes a hostile witness may give a different answer on cross, which is a proper subject matter for redirect, if ever, when your time comes. Witness may answer, yes, Mr. Antonio, you may respond to the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. The way I understand the question is that the funds was not used for any of the regular programs of the OVP under the socio-economic delivery programs for the 2023. So with that, sir, I can say yes, the confidential funds were not used for the purpose of the implementation of the socio-economic programs of the OVP in itself.
And you know that information by virtue of your position, not only as the Assistant Chief of Staff, but also as the administrative but also as the supervising officer of the Administrative and Financial Management Office of the OVP.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct, ma'am.
Thank you. The socio-economic program can be found in the 2023 General Appropriations Act.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
confirm that?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct, ma'am.
Okay. And it's a line item, in fact, under the 2023 GAA.
Yes, correct, ma'am.
As the Assistant Chief of Staff of the OVP, were you made aware of the reason why the Good Governance Program was changed to Economic Program Delivery in the 2023 PFP, if you know?
Based on my recollection, ma'am, there was a change in the term, in the program title from good governance to socio-economic program in 2023 so that it encompasses, parang mako-cover nung title ng program yung all of the projects of the OVP because because all the programs of the OVP addresses yung socio-economic concerns that the office would want to address.
Thank you. Let's go to OMs and the notice of suspension. You testified that as the Assistant Chief of Staff, you drafted and signed the replies to the AOMs received by the Office of the Vice President for the fourth quarter of 2022, as well as the first to third quarters of 2023. Do you confirm that?
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
And you also signed the OVP's response and supplemental response to the notice of suspension dated December 13, 2023, relative to the fourth quarter of the confidential funds for the fourth quarter of 2022. Do you confirm
Yes,
that?
that's correct, ma'am. I'm one of the signatories.
And because of that, you have studied all of the AOMs as well as the notice of suspension.
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
The AOMs sought clarification on the liquidation documents of the OVP, correct?
Yes.
And the notice of suspension did not contain the phrase, if you recall, did not contain the phrase misuse of funds, if you can recall.
Based on my recollection, ma'am, I cannot recall.
Your
ma'am.
Honor, original documents rule, Your Honor. Your Honor, and
Well,
I know the, Your Honor, I know
Counsel's
the...
on because before your objection, witness already said that he cannot recall. So move on, Attorney Christine.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, and in that, in those AOMs, can you recall if there was any finding of misuse of funds?
Already asked and answered, Your Honor.
I'm asking about findings, Your Honor.
She's asking about findings, Counsel.
Based on my understanding, ma'am, no misuse, ma'am, although there were certain clarifications that were made.
Thank you. And the notice of suspension also does not contain any finding or findings on the misuse of funds.
None that I can... Some clarifications, ma'am.
Thank you. And the AOMs and the notice of suspension were not final findings of the COA-ICFAO when it comes to the confidential funds of the OVP. Do you confirm that?
Yes, ma'am. That's my understanding, ma'am, na once we receive the AOMs, we are given the opportunity to send our comments.
Thank you. In fact, if you know, there is a pending motion for reconsideration before the Commission proper relative to the notice of disallowance covering the confidential funds for the fourth quarter of 2022, if you know.
Objection, Your Honor.
Before
That
you
is-
answer, Attorney May.
Your Honor, that's no longer covered by the direct examination. The rule for the cross-examination of hostile witnesses under Rule 132, Section 13 is different, Your Honor. What can be covered on cross-examination of a hostile witness are only those matters that were covered on direct examination. At no point was a mention of petition for review ever made during direct examination.
The court will give counsel sufficient leeway the court would also like to find out about this petition for review, which was discussed with the witness, Gina Acosta. Witness may answer.
Sorry again, ma'am, the question, ma'am.
Yes, I'll repeat my question. If you know, there is a pending AR on the note, there is a pending motion for reconsideration of the notice of disallowance covering the confidential funds for the fourth quarter of 2022.
Yes, ma'am.
Misleading, Your Honor. Your Honor, move to strike, Your Honor, because I wasn't given enough opportunity.
Kindly wait just for a few seconds before answering. Yes, what is the ground of the objection, counsel?
It's misleading, Your Honor, because a petition for review, it was not on, sorry, it was not, it was not.
I'd rather repeat my question, Your Honor.
Kindly repeat,
If I
Attorney
can.
Christine.
Yes, thank you. In fact, okay, if you know, there is a pending motion for reconsideration of the notice of disallowance covering the confidential quarter of 2022 before the commission proper of COA.
Your Honor, again, this,
Yes,
this
counsel?
witness will be incompetent to testify on it, Your Honor. The participation of this witness in the filing of the petition for review has not yet been established. It wasn't even established yet, Your Honor, that this witness is even aware of the contents of the petition for review.
Your Honor, the court already ruled.
If he knows, Mr. Otoño, if you know.
I am aware, Your Honor, but as to the specifics on the reply to the or the contents of the MR, I'm not very much aware of the contents.
Thank you. As to the first to third quarters of 2022, a notice of disallowance was issued by the COA dated March 31, 2026, if you know.
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
In fact, you are the person who received the notice on April 8, 2026 on behalf of the Vice President.
Again, Your Honor, with all due respect, that's already going beyond what was discussed on direct examination, which is prescribed under Section 13, Rule 132, Your Honor. At no point did we discuss the notice of disallowance for the last three AOM. Discussion during direct examination were limited to the notice of suspension, up to only the notice of suspension.
The chair will note will convert the objection of counsel to a continuing objection with respect to the line of questioning of Attorney Christine on this witness. But the court will allow it, but notes the continuing objection of counsel with respect to these notices of disallowance that were issued.
Thank you,
Mr.
Your Honor.
Otoño, please answer.
Yeah. Ma'am, can you repeat the question, ma'am?
Okay, I will repeat. A notice of disallowance was issued by the COA on dated March 31, 2026, relative to the first to third quarters of 2023.
Yes, ma'am.
And you are who received the notice of disallowance on April 8, 2026 on behalf of the Vice President.
Yes, ma'am. I received the document on behalf of the Vice President as the Assistant Chief of Staff.
Okay, thank you. Under the COA rules, if you know, since you are the one who also responded to the AOMs, under the COA rules of procedure, the OVP has 6 months from its receipt of the ND or the notice of disallowance to file a petition for commission proper of the COA.
Objection, Your Honor. This witness will be incompetent. Unlike the joint circular, Your Honor, which he specifically mentioned in his replies, Your Honor. There was no mention whatsoever of the COA rules in any of his replies.
If he knows, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Attorney Christine, move on to, we get your point. You can move on to your
Okay,
next
Your
point.
Honor. I will continue. Now, your involvement when it comes to the OVP confidential funds were, kindly confirm each item. Number 1, processing the request for the confidential funds for the fourth quarter of 2022.
Misleading, Your Honor. There was that that effect during the direct examination?
Attorney
Your Honor,
Christine?
she asked for the functions, Your Honor. She even presented the documents, Your Honor, pertaining to the
But at no point,
confidential funds of 2022, Your Honor,
If I may, Your
which
Honor.
the witness also processed. Thank you.
Yes, Attorney May?
if I know, there was no, again, that's misleading, Your Honor. The participation of this witness in that request. In fact, he himself explained, Your Honor, during direct examination, that the request was purely the Vice President's. He had no participation whatsoever in the request. He is only aware that a request was made because of that letter that he was confronted with. That's why throughout the direct examination, his answers would be limited to what is contained in the documents.
Well, if he knows counsel, this would be a ripe subject matter for your redirect if he all of a sudden regains, if all of a sudden he remembers, it is a proper subject matter of redirect. Witness may answer.
Ma'am,
Your Honor, yes. Your involvement when it comes to the OVP confidential funds were, number one, processing the request for the confidential funds for the fourth quarter of 2022 by your letter dated September 9, 2022 to the DBM.
ma'am, just a quick clarification, ma'am. When you say processing, ma'am, in terms of
Handling the request.
yes, ma'am, through my office, ma'am, we transmitted the DBM.
Okay. Signing of vouchers.
That's correct, ma'am. Signing of vouchers.
Signing of checks.
Yes.
Signing of responses to the AOMs and the notice of disallowance.
Yes, ma'am.
And acting as liaison when it comes to the submission of the liquidation documents to the ICFAO.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. You were not involved in the drafting of the quarterly liquidation reports of the confidential funds, correct?
No, ma'am.
That work belongs to Ms. Gina Acosta, right?
As of my understanding, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
You were not involved in the disbursement of confidential funds, is that right?
No.
And also the recording of confidential expenses.
No, ma'am.
The recording of confidential expenses is being done by Ms. Gina Acosta.
Yes, yes.
And you were not also involved in the confidential operations of the OVP.
No, ma'am.
And you have not met any of the informants of the OVP.
No, ma'am.
Neither did Ms. Gina Acosta meet any of them, if you know.
That I would have no not personal knowledge, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. As far as you know, the confidential informants only liaise with Colonel Lachi.
That is of my understanding, ma'am.
And the reason being is that the information as to the identity of the informants is classified and sensitive under the joint circulars, item 3.28.
Objection, Your Honor. This witness has already repeatedly testified that he had no participation in the disbursement of the confidential funds, Your Honor. And yet, defense counsel, with all due respect to her, keeps on propounding questions related to the disbursement.
And this answer, counsel, will always be in the negative because he has been consistent in regard to not having any participation with the disbursement. I think that has been established, Attorney Christine, that he has no participation.
Actually, Your Honor, my question was not about the disbursement, Your Honor. If I can repeat it, Your
Kindly
Honor.
repeat the question,
Yes, thank
Attorney
you.
Christine.
You answered earlier that as far as you know, the confidential informants only liaise with Colonel Lachica. That was your answer. And the reason being, okay, if you know, is that the information as to the identity of the informants is classified
It's
and
the same
sensitive
banana, Your Honor.
under the JC. Can I just finish my question, Your Honor?
Finish the question, counsel.
Yes. And I will repeat, Your Honor. The reason being is that the information as to the identity is sensitive under the joint circular.
Your Honor, I raised the same objection, Your Honor. This witness already testified that he has no participation in the disbursement and implementation of the confidential funds. Now, is asking the reason why the informants did not directly.
Your Honor, please.
Chair will make a ruling. Chair will sustain the objection, but not on that ground, but on the ground it is misleading because the witness did not say that nature, but that, if I remember correctly, it was confidential. That was the statement made by Attorney Latchika to him. Na
Yes,
hindi niya sasabihin because it was confidential.
Yes,
in
Your
nature.
Honor. We will no longer push the question. Thank you.
Move on to your next point, Attorney Christine.
Thank you.
Are you ready for your redirect, counsel?
Your Honor, may I just have 10 minutes, Your Honor, to organize my redirect, Your Honor, given the number of questions that were propounded on cross-examination.
With the permission of the senator judges, so as to save on time, while we're giving Attorney May some time, you will have the similar Attorney Christine, if you so desire, for your recross. I will, in the meantime, allow senator judges to interject in the interregnum to save on the court's time. I can see the hand of Senator Soto. Anika, can you, after Senator Soto, can you list the rest? Chair recognizes Senator Judge Soto for his interjection. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. It's actually just one question to Mr. Ortonio. And this is out of my curiosity. Earlier, you confirmed that all admin and finance matters dumadaan sa'yo.
That's correct po, Your Honor.
That you were the head of HR in Davao, the LGU.
That's correct po, Your Honor.
Correct. In this regard, I'm sure you would know, what is the employment status of Colonel Lachica in the office of the Vice President?
Colonel Lachica po is the group commander of the VP-SPG, and he is not an employee of, but he has an order coming from the AFP designating him as the group commander for the Vice Presidential Security and Protection Group.
Therefore, designation.
There
You're
is an
saying he is not employed. He does not have any employment status in the office of the Vice President.
Yes po, Your Honor.
Well, that's all I wanted to know, Mr. President. Thank you.
Again, Senator Judge Soto. Next to interject is Senator Erwin Tulfo. You may proceed, sir. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. Ginoong Testigo, nabasa niyo po ba na mabuti at naintindihan ang nilalaman ng Joint Memorandum Circular, sir?
Good morning, sir. Yes, Your Honor, I was able to read it, and based on my understanding, I was able to understand the contents of the JMC.
Nung kayo po ay pinadalahan na ng Notice of Disallowance ng COA, nabasa niyo rin po ba kayo po pinadalhan ng Notice of Disallowance, kailangan niyo pong sagutin yung kanilang AOM?
Yes po, for the 2022 and 2023.
2022. So naintindihan po ninyo na sinasabi doon ng COA na while confidential funds allow for the payment of rewards to civilian information, yung COA po cannot be structured as broad distribution of medicines, food, grocery packs, or household goods. And that kung ito po ay reward, dapat po specific targeted financial payouts lamang po at hindi po pwedeng ibili ng mga gamot o ng mga upuan bilang reward. Naintindihan niyo po ba yun?
Sir, based on sir, that is the initial observation coming from the COA, and we were able to provide comment on that on our replies.
Tama. Pero alam niyo po ba ng Office of the Vice President is a civilian office? Ibig sabihin, hindi po sila military, therefore, hindi po sila possess ng formal national security or law enforcement mandate. Sabi po ng COA guidelines, sir, again, specifically, the operational intelligence gathering is the domain of military, police, and specialized enforcement bodies. Hindi po kasama ang VP, PSPG po roon. Did you know that?
Sir, based on my understanding, sir, sa JMC is that the confidential funds is allowed for civilian agencies, sir, and in coordination with the different law enforcing agencies. Yun po yung pagkakaintindi ko
Yun po ang pagkakaintindi ho ninyo. Pero iba po yung sinasabi po ng COA sa inyo, kaya po kayo may notice of disallowance. Kaya po sinasabi ng COA at ini-issue po sa inyo allowance na 73.3 million ng OVP December 2020 to confidential spending. Yung po ang dahilan na major reason for this allowance was the 24.93 million pesos spent on medicines and 34.857 million spent on various goods were improperly categorized under the guise of intelligence reward. Po ba yun? Kaya pinadalhan po kayo ng COA, sir.
Sir, based on what I can recall po, sir, on the notice of disallowance that was sent to our office, what they required, sir, was that the submission of an intelligence report to support the payment of those rewards. So yun po yung pagkakaintindi ko regarding sa letter.
So, sir, may problem. Kaya kayo pinagpapaliwanag.
There is an issue po, sir, that we needed
There's
to
an
comply.
issue. Okay. Panghuli na lamang, Mr. Presiding Officer, one last question. So, sino po
You may
mga
proceed.
nag-imbento at saan galing yung mga alias po na yun? Is that only Colonel La Chica o sa grupo ninyo, sila Chica, sila Pusa, Aso, etc., may sila Pagong? Who invented those?
Sir, I do not know, sir. Number one, sir, I cannot answer, sir, if invented, sir. But as to the AR, sir, I cannot provide information, sir, because I don't have any participation in the implementation of the confidential activities.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Presiding Officer, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Judge Erwin Tulfo. Senator Judge Pangilinan is recognized. You have 2 minutes, sir. You may proceed when you're ready.
Magandang umaga, Ginoong Ortonio.
Good morning, sir.
Yes. Pwede nyo bang ipaliwanag yung naging proseso, no? Dahil base sa testimonya ni Acosta, ni Ginang Acosta at sa inyo, yung testimonya nyo, from December 2022 to September 2022, a total of 122 million pesos in cash was distributed to perhaps hundreds of informants after doing surveillance work, was given rewards, and they purchased medicines. Tama po?
Based on the information that was shared to me by the security officer,
That's
sir.
correct. Yun yung nangyari.
Based on the information, sir.
Bakit gamot? Would you know?
Sir, I would not know, sir, but although based on the information that was shared to me by the security officer, those were yung representation or yun daw po yung inilapit ng mga informants or agents that they needed at the time.
Bilang reward.
Yes, as a
Pero
form
pera
of-
ang binigay, sabi ninyo, no?
Yes, sir.
Kung talagang gamot ang binili.
I would
Dahil-
have no idea, sir, on the implementation, sir.
Dahil walang resibo. Acknowledgement receipt meron.
Acknowledgement receipt, sir.
You were head of the BA, the BAC, no? Bids and Awards.
Bids and awards.
So
committee,
familiar
sir.
ka, pagka purchases, dapat may bidding ang medicines.
Correct, sir.
Di ba?
Yes, sir.
So, kung yun ang pinaliwanag sa'yo, sa loob ng 9 na buwan, hindi mo ba tinanong o hindi mo ba sinita na dapat pagka medicines, dapat bidding? Kasi ako ang head ng Bids and Awards. Alam ko yan eh.
Sir, I was only made aware of the concern regarding the medicines and food supplies, sir, when the AOM, when we received the AOM, which was around October of 2023, sir. So that was parang almost 9 months after the 20 implementation for the confidential funds.
Okay. So, hindi mo alam kung bakit gamot, no? Sinabi lang sa'yo, no? Pero bilang in charge ng financial services, yun na nga, hindi mo rin talaga alam kung yung 122 million ay gamot ang binili.
For that purpose, sir, I would have no personal knowledge, sir.
At sa usapin naman ng supplies, sabi, purchase of supplies. Anong supplies yun? Would you know?
I do not know of, I'm not familiar, sir, kung ano po yung mga supplies na ni-request.
So hindi mo rin
po, sir.
alam na yung 112 million pesos worth of goods, anong goods yun?
Again, sir, personal knowledge, sir, on the specifics of the supplies, sir.
You know, you have 2 master's degrees, you're a graduate of Ateneo. Would you consider this usual?
As far as sa
I mean, now that you know, di ba sabi nga nila, hindsight, 2020. Vision is always 2020 in hindsight. So ganitong para sa survey ng gamot na 122 million, yung mga informant, sila na lang daw ang bibili ng gamot. Is this usual? In terms of using government funds? And you being a BAC head?
Based on my understanding po, sir, at saka sa pagkakaintindi ko po, sir, it went through the process that is allowable by law. So
it's usual for you? It's usual? That's just my question. Do you find this usual? And you say, yes or no? So you find this process na medicines ang binibigay bilang mga informant, pero hindi medicines, pera, sila bibili ng medicines, 122 million in a period of 9 months, for you that's usual?
Kung sa pagkakaintindi ko po, sir, and based po sa understanding ko po sa JMC, sir, I would say so, sir.
Okay. No further questions at this time, sir.
Thank you. The next in line is Senator Judge Tulfo, but with your permission, Honorable Tulfo, thereafter, Senator Villanueva, the Senate President, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lacson. The 10 minutes of Attorney May is up. Attorney May, can you now proceed with your redirect? To Attorney Christine, asking for a similar time for her recross. Should she require it?
Good morning.
Attorney May, you may proceed when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Antonio.
Good morning, ma'am.
Okay. Kanina, on sinabi mo na sa pagkakaalam mo, hindi required na i-attach ang PFP sa request for confidential funds. Tama ba?
Yes po.
Okay. Now, may we confront you with Section 3.24 of the Joint Circular 2015-01. Can you kindly read it for
may
the
approach
record?
and show the witness the J-01, the relevant provision thereof.
Can you kindly read for the record what 3.24 of the Joint Circular states?
3.24 Physical and Financial Plan refers to the plan approved by the head of office in the case of NGAs and LGUs and by the Board of Directors in the case of GOCCs, supporting the request for funds for CE and IE containing the estimated amount per project, activity, and program.
Okay. Nabasa niyo po ba yan bago kayo sumagot kanina? Familiar po kayo sa provision na yan?
Yes, ma'am, na I cannot remember this one, ma'am.
Okay. Ngayon, hindi rin ikaw ang nagpadala or nag-prepare ng October 22, 2022 letter. Tama ba?
Sorry, ma'am.
Hindi rin ikaw ang nagpadala. August 22, 2022 letter. Tama ba?
It is through our
Yes.
usual na routing process, ma'am.
And also, sabi mo kahapon, it was the decision of the Vice President to request the confidential funds. Tama ba?
Yes, as the head of agency, ma'am, I would understand that she has the authority to request for the said funds, ma'am.
And siya rin yung nag-sign off dun sa August 2022 letter. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Siya yung pumirma. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So hindi mo hindi mo alam kung paano ininterpret ng Vice President na iyong binasa. Tama ba? You cannot say with certainty how the Vice President interpreted that provision.
Before you answer, Mr. Ortoño, yes, Attorney Christine?
Witnesses in state of mind of the Vice President.
That's
Your Honor.
precisely the point, Your Honor. That's precisely what I'm asking the witness to confirm, that he cannot say with certainty the frame of mind of the Vice President if she was also thinking that the PFP is not required.
Applying the rules equally, if he knows, witness may answer.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Again, ma'am, for the question ulit, ma'am.
So hindi mo rin masasabi, you cannot say with certainty na ganyan din ang interpretasyon ng Vice Presidente dun sa nang ipinadala ang sulat to the DBM dated August 22, 2022. Tama ba?
I cannot, ma'am.
But you are sure, you can confirm that the Vice President is a lawyer. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am, she is a lawyer.
Na yung confidential funds, to your knowledge, hindi lang to ginastos sa regular programs ng good governance. Tama ba?
Ma'am, what I meant, ma'am, is that...
Sorry, Mr. Tony, let me just clarify. Sinabi mo kanina na to your knowledge, yung confidential funds were not spent on the regular programs under the good governance program.
That's correct, ma'am.
Yan din yung sinabi mo para sa socio-economic delivery programs. Ang sabi mo, yung confidential funds hindi ginamit sa regular programs ng socio-economic delivery programs ng OVP. Tama ba?
That's correct, ma'am.
Pero you will confirm na yung sa PFP, hindi naka-indicate na the confidential funds will not be used not for the regular programs of the good governance program of the OVP. Tama ba? Walang qualification dun sa PFP. Tama ba? Ang nakalagay lang doon, good governance program.
Yes, ma'am. Based on the document that I saw, ma'am, it only indicated the program titles.
Okay. Tama. So, hindi nagagamitin ang confidential funds para sa programa other than the regular programs under the good governance program. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Same is true 23 PFP. Ang nakalagay lamang doon, socio-economic delivery. Walang qualification. Tama ba?
Based on the document that was
Yes.
presented, ma'am.
Hindi rin sinabi na the confidential funds for 2023 ay gagamitin other than the regular programs of the socio-economic delivery programs of the OVP. Tama ba?
Sorry, ma'am. Can you repeat the question, ma'am?
Hindi
To be
rin
clear.
sinabi sa PFP for 2023 the confidential funds of the OVP will be used for programs other than the regular programs under the socio-economic delivery program of the OVP.
Document, ma'am, it does not specifically indicate.
Okay. And you would confirm that the seeming confusion would have been avoided had the Office of the Vice President only indicated the specific programs under both the good governance programs and the socio-economic development in the PFP. Tama
Objection.
ba?
Objection.
What is the ground?
Speculative, Your Honor.
Your Honor, again, a question does not...
The witness is smart enough. Mr. Ortoño, you may answer if you know.
Can you
The confusion would have been avoided or would have been averted. May iwasan sana ito kung yung OVP nilagay doon sa dalawang PFP for 2022 and 2023 yung specific each and every program that will be funded by the confidential funds for both
Objection.
years. Tama ba?
Objection, Your Honor.
So
What's the
already ruled
objection,
upon, Your
Attorney
Honor.
Christine?
The witness did not say there was a confusion, Your Honor. That was misleading.
I didn't say, Your Honor, that this
But her question says, so the confusion should have been avoided, Your Honor. The question is misleading.
because, Your Honor, there was an inconsistency, Your Honor. Earlier,
She is interpreting and making conclusions out of the answer of the witness, Your Honor.
Attorney May, reform. Yes, the witness did not say that he was confused.
Okay.
Reform, you can get to the same point. Throw another way.
Okay. So, Mr. Ortonio, kung nilagay yung each and every program that will be funded, stinate ng PFP, yung particular programs na paggagamitan ng confidential funds, wala sanang question kung saan ito ginamit. Tama ba?
Objection, Your Honor. Same objection, Your Honor. Actually misleading kasi wala sanang questions. He did not say that there were questions on
Then
the
I will
confidential.
drop the sana, Your Honor.
Mr. Ortonio, if I may, counsels. Mr. Ortonio, bakit hindi nilagay doon sa PAP yung particular ng good governance at socio-economic program na hindi ito bahagi doon sa original o regular na budget ng OVP? Sa
Sir,
pagkakaalam mo.
Thank you, Your Honor. On the question, bakit hindi nilagay, sir, I would have no personal knowledge, sir, on why, since the document was prepared by our Special Disbursing Officer.
Sa paggawa ng sagot sa OEM, nilagay niyo yon, hindi na masasama sa OEM, sa AOM yon?
Based on my understanding, sir, it could have helped, sir, to clarify.
Witness counsel?
Okay. Mr. Ortonio, yesterday and today, paulit-ulit mong sinasabi na wala kang participation sa disbursement and implementation of the confidential funds. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am.
So hindi mo rin alam saan ginamit yung confidential funds, kung anong programa dinisburse ito. Tama ba?
Objection. Objection, Your Honor.
What is the ground?
Not
Attorney
covered by
Christine?
the cross.
Let's give her sufficient leeway, counsel. This is one of the questions in the minds of the Senate to clarify. You may answer, Mr. Ortonio.
No, I would not have any personal knowledge.
So hindi mo rin alam, based on your personal knowledge, na yung confidential funds ay hindi ginastos sa under the good governance program. Tama ba? Kasi wala kang, sabi mo, wala kang participation, wala kang personal knowledge kung saan dinisburse yung confidential funds. Tama ba?
Based on my understanding, ma'am.
Wala ka ring personal knowledge kung paano in-implement ang confidential funds. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am.
So hindi mo rin masasabi, based on your personal na yung confidential funds ay ginastos sa mga programa other than the so-called regular programs of the good governance program.
Objection, Your Honor.
What is the ground, Christine?
Misleading, Your Honor. The witness did that say funds were spent on the good governance programs of the OVP.
That was not the point, Attorney Christine. Witness may answer. If the presiding officer may, Mr. Ortonio, kung wala kang personal na kaalaman kung paano ginastos yung confidential, wala ka ring personal na kaalaman kung ginastos sa regular na programa ng OVP yung confidential fund.
I do not have any personal knowledge, sir, on how the confidential funds was implemented,
At all.
sir.
Kung saan napunta yon, wala kang alam.
No, sir.
Kung napunta man sa tama o mali, madumi o malinis, wala kang alam.
I would have no personal knowledge, sir.
Okay. Your
Earlier,
witness, counsel.
tinanong ka din, bakit nag-change yung program, the PPAs, for the 2023 PFP. When I say PPAs, I'm referring to the projects, plans, and activities. Tinanong ka kanina kung bakit yung programs, plans, and activities under the 2023 naging socio-economic delivery program na dati under the 2022 PFP, ito ay good governance program. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am. The
Yes.
way I understand the
Wait.
question, ma'am.
Wait lang. Ito yung tanong, Mr. Ortonio. Ang sabi mo kanina, nag-change ng PPA sa 2020 PFP para makover ang mas marami pang programa. Tama ba?
Ma'am, I'll clarify, ma'am.
Wait,
I,
Mr. Antonio, please just answer my question with a yes or no.
I answered, ma'am.
Let the witness answer, Attorney May.
Thank you.
I answered the question earlier, ma'am, in the context of why there was a change in from good governance to socio-economic delivery in the context of in the GAA. So that's how I answered it, ma'am.
Okay. Pero you will confirm na wala ka ring participation dun sa pag-identify, sa pag-prepare ng PFP. Meron ka bang participation?
For the PFP,
Kanina tinanong ka rin tungkol sa petition for review na final ng OVP sa COA. Tama ba?
yes, ma'am.
And you will confirm that this petition for review was denied by the COA. Tama ba?
And yes, ma'am, and
Yes.
subject for motion for reconsideration.
Ibig sabihin, nang dininay ito ng COA, yung COA, it stood pat with its earlier decision, with its earlier findings. Tama ba?
Your Honor,
So,
Yes, ma'am, but then again, subject for the filing of motion for reconsideration.
Sinabi mo din kanina na wala kang participation sa drafting ng liquidation. Wala kang participation sa drafting ng request. Wala kang participation sa drafting ng liquidation documents. Wala kang participation sa disbursement. Wala kang participation sa recording kasi ang may sige ng Acosta, di ba?
Yes, ma'am,
Naalala mo
that's
yun?
correct.
You will confirm na ikaw, ang Chief of Staff at ang Vice President, ang 3 top officers ng OVP, tama ba?
Chief of Staff, ma'am. Yes.
So, kayong tatlo, kayo yung top 3 officers ng OVP. Assistant Chief of Staff, and the Vice President herself. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Sinabi mo tungkol din sa mga bagay na yon. At sinasabi rin ng Chief of Staff na wala rin siyang alam tungkol sa mga bagay na ito. So tama bang sabihin na among
Your
the
Honor,
3 of
please.
you lang ang nakakaalam?
let her finish the question. Witness will not answer the question until the objection is ruled upon by the chair. Finish your question, Attorney May.
Done, Your Honor.
Attorney Christine, what's your objection?
misleading, Your Honor, and vague. Our staff has not yet testified with regard to the confidential funds.
Well, Attorney Christine, the court took judicial notice of the proceedings in the House of Representatives where the Chief of Staff, Attorney Lopez, testified through the TSN. And such statements were made along those lines by the Chief of Staff of the Vice President. Witness may answer.
Ma'am, can I be clarified with the question? Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay. Kanina, sinabi mo na ang top 3 officers ay ikaw, as Assistant Chief of Staff, ang Chief of Staff, at ang Vice President herself. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Ngayon, sinabi mo na wala kang alam tungkol sa drafting ng liquidation reports. Tama ba? Wala ka ring alam sa disbursement ng confidential funds. Wala ka ring alam tungkol sa recording the confidential funds. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Ito rin yung naging posisyon ng Chief of Staff. Wala rin siyang alam tungkol sa mga bagay na to. Ngayon, tama bang sabihin na dahil kayong tatlo, ang top 3 na officers or officials ng Office of the Vice President, President lamang ang may alam tungkol dito sa mga bagay na to?
Objection.
What's the ground, Christine?
Speculative, Your Honor.
If you know, Your Honor, we don't want to belabor this point, Your Honor, but Defense counsel keeps bringing us back to this point, Your Honor. The question does not become speculative simply because it's couched in a what if question, Your Honor. And besides, Your Honor, this honorable court has already ruled and has already directed to
Your Honor,
to answer, Your Honor.
The counsel would want the witness to speculate on the state of mind of the Vice President.
No, Your Honor. Let me answer it in 2 points, Your Honor.
Please, counsel, briefly.
Yes, it's not speculative, Your Honor, because there was already an admission that 3 officials of the OVP. Now, the answer would be based on that admission, so it's not speculative. The question would only be speculative. It's completely conjectural, Your Honor. And second, Your Honor, the only reason I repeated the answer because the witness requested me to repeat, but prior to me repeating the question, the Honorable Presiding Officer has already made a ruling. Your Honor, we will be squandering away time if every time I would repeat a question, the defense counsel would all of a sudden invoke another ground for objection.
We're about to break for lunch, so let's end it on a good note.
Yes, but I will raise my objection, Your Honor. Incompetent.
Allow me, counsels. Base sa testimonya mo, Ginoong Ortonio, wala kang alam sa paggastos, pag-liquidate, pag-disburse ng confidential fund. Tama?
Yes, that's correct, Your Honor.
Sabi ni Gina Acosta, wala.
Good morning, I'm Cheska Liton-Calao. Here are the latest stories at this hour. The court declared a quorum with 17 senator judges present during the roll call at the start of Day 19 of Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment trial. Private prosecutor attorney Amando Virgil Ligutan was given 5 minutes to respond to the defense's August 12 manifestation, calling out his social media post. Ligutan said it was his way of correcting what he had heard from the defense that day, which implied that misleading questions were allowed in court, adding that his teacher's instinct kicked in. He added that a correction from one side should not be turned into a shield of criticism for the other. Presiding Officer Cheese Escudero said Attorney Christine Ferrer may have been referring to leading questions and not misleading questions when she said these were allowed. Escudero also reminded the senator judges of the need for impartiality. However, Escudero clarified that this impartiality should not prevent the senator judges from examining the evidence. Regarding Rule 18, which prohibits parties from making public disclosures about the merits of the case, Escudero said the court would extend grace. Escudero urged those covered by Rule 18 to avoid public statements discussing the trial's merits and trial by publicity, saying these could undermine the court's integrity and dignity. Escudero said the court would close its doors to trial by publicity, but remain open to disciplined advocacy where evidence is tested, errors are corrected, and justice is done. Attorney Christine Ferrer led the cross-examination of second hostile witness Lemuel Ortonio. Ortonio reiterated that he was not involved in confidential operations or the disbursement of confidential funds. Senator judges then asked Ortonio questions before Attorney May Divinagracia's redirect examination. At this point, let's get the latest from the Vice President's defense team. Mobile journalist Arles de los Santos joins us live for the details. Arles, go ahead.
Cheska, nang nagsisimula nga yung pagpapaalala ni impeachment court presiding officer Chis Escudero patungkol dito sa sub judice rule no at yung complaint or manifestation ng defense team patungkol nga doon sa social media post ni Attorney Virgil Ligutan ng prosekusyon no ay naglabas ng pahayag si Vice President Sara Duterte kaugnay na nagpapatuloy na impeachment trial laban sa kanya no kung saan ang sinasabi niya no ay kailangan daw patunayan ng mga ebidensya ang mga alegasyon na laban sa kanya at hindi sa pamamagitan ng mga insulto, espekulasyon o maging mga political theatrics. No? Ang sabi niya, ang mga matatag o ang malakas na kaso daw ay hindi dapat naka-adorn sa mga theatrics o mga teatriko at ang mga senador na tinawag na isang stupido ang isang witness at ang isang abogado na tinawag siyang mastermind or of a scam at yung isa pang witness ay tinawag naman siyang brata ay hindi daw nagpapatunay o nagpapalakas sa kaso laban sa kanya kahit daw yung mga ebidensya, no? At ang sinabi pa nga nito na ang insulto ay nagpapalabas, no, ng mahinang presentasyon o sandigan ng kanilang kaso. At sinabi pa nito, lubog na daw sa baha ang bansa sa kahirapan at sa kahirapan at sa baha ang bansa, pero tila wala raw nananagot dahil ang impeachment daw at ang paghahati-hatian ng 2027 budget at paghahanda kung paano baliin ang konstitusyon para manatili sa pwesto ang prioridad ng administrasyon at ang lahat ng mga kaalyado nito. Ayan ang sinabi ni Vice President Sara Duterte para sa ika-19 na araw ng impeachment trial laban sa kanya. Inaasahan natin at Cheska na haharap si Vice President Sara Duterte dito, pero sa ngayon ay kinakatawan pa lamang siya, no, ng kanyang mga legal counsel.
Arles,
Cheska.
thank you so much, Mobile Journal, Arles de los Santos. Join us again at 1 p.m. for the very latest stories. I'm Cheska Litancalao, kapatid, we are One News.